you're getting the message or not, but we want to cut back the time the sheriff spends.
This is the hard copy, right?
What you have in
Okay.
front of you is the hard copy of the proposed ordinance. Now, there isn't a lot of difference, not a lot of difference between what you're seeing here and what you saw about a year or so ago. But I wanted to walk you through a few things briefly. And there's a few different ways that we could go about this, and I'll let you guys kind of tell me the way that you want to go about it. My understanding is you'd like to maybe even get this on an agenda fairly soon when it's ready to make a decision on. I think that we've got it in a form where you could make a decision on it, next week if you wanted to. Just up to you guys on if you're ready for it.
If we waited till January to do this, I'd be just fine with it.
We won't be ready by next week,
Okay.
especially when you hear what I have to say.
Okay, no worries. And there's a few things I want to make sure you guys are aware of that are in here. Just a reminder from last year. And then there's one more section that I added in that needed to be added in. It's not related to SDRs. It's related to non-conforming uses. But I had to dive into the non-conforming use chapter just to make sure that this wasn't conflicting with what was in there. And so I just provided an update all around. So let's start with that very briefly, so you can see what the difference is. If you wanted to exit from the proposal, the non-conforming use updates, I could bring that in a separate proposal, but let me kind of show you what we're looking at here. Sorry, get down to the right pages here. Our current non-conforming use chapter is pretty challenging to use. There's a lot of room for interpretation. And I'd like to try and knock some of that interpretation down. And so page 25 is where the non-conforming use chapter starts. And basically,
25.
page 25. And what I've done in this section here is I've just taken what we currently have listed in our non-conforming use chapter, organized it into primarily three categories: non-complying structures, non-conforming uses, and non-conforming lots. Previously, it was just kind of a shotgun shot in the code that said whatever hits. And so it's just a mix and match of a whole bunch of different things. I've just organized it so it actually flows better. I also went in, I've noticed that some of the changes we've made over the last 5-6 years have made certain portions of this section irrelevant. And so I've deleted some of those things, and I've just tried to keep it as concise and succinct as it can be. In fact, I think it's going to be quite a bit shorter than it was, because I think we've got better ordinances in other sections that accommodate for what it was trying to do at one point in time. So if for any reason you look at this section here and you say, I don't like what's in here, let's pull it off this, pull it out of short term, then we can just bring it to you guys separately and have it stand on its own merits. Okay, an update on where we are in the process. The Planning Commission has already made a recommendation on short-term rentals. This is probably close to 2 years ago, maybe a little bit more. And they didn't like that we were talking about it at all, and they recommended denial of an ordinance update. They wanted a little bit more time to really vet through new ideas. At that time, we brought the recommendation for denial to you guys, and you guys mentioned, well, we're having a hard time dealing with what we have now. And maybe we need to be looking at this just a little bit differently. So that's where we kind of took a step back and looked at the bigger picture and came to you guys with best management practices from a variety of other communities. And so what you have in front of you as far as short-term rentals go, it's a mix and match of best practices that we researched from. We probably looked at 20 or 30 other communities. In fact, I don't know if it was you, Sarah, or Jan Fulmer, who sent me a link over, but the state of Colorado, I think it was you, state of Colorado has a coalition, I'm supposing, or whatever it's called. Yeah, mountain towns that have a list of short-term rental regulations. It's just a spreadsheet that says this community does this, that, this, that, this, that. That was made here in Weaver County by Scott Perks. And either he made it and they took it because there's been a lot of communication between us and some of the resort towns in Colorado, or he pulled that and added to it. But I'm pretty sure that that file originated from here. So interesting that they're using something that we haven't yet adopted. But really, it's just a comparison.
Yeah, but that's a comparison, right?
Just a comparison of what all the different jurisdictions are doing and how they're.
So can you get that to us?
Yeah, certainly. It's a big spreadsheet. I mean, little tiny font, and it may even be in some of your old paperwork, but I can get it into your
Yeah,
emails.
I remember seeing that. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so the way that short-term rentals, we're proposing that they work here in Weaver County. Number one, we came to you guys with, I think we had 3 different options or scenarios. And I think the direction that we received from you guys is maybe if we're looking at allowing short-term rentals to occur in neighborhoods that don't already allow it to occur, we should probably limit it to owner occupied. And so looking at what owner occupied residential dwelling units, which ones can and can't do short-term rentals, and the specific stipulations that go along with it, I think that'll be important, just to make sure we all wrap our head around. And then a question of whether or not any kind of non-owner occupied should be allowed in those neighborhoods. So the proposal that you have in front of you guys, we've got owner occupied, and these are the hoops that an owner has to jump through to be able to get this right. And then under the non-owner occupied, we talk about allowing that through a transferable development right program, where they're essentially taking transferable development rights from somewhere else and moving it to their property and turning it from a residential dwelling right into a short-term development or short-term rental right. In other words, eating rights off of an open space area and converting it into a short-term rental. So the question really is, on balance, does the valley want to see less development rights, but possibly a couple more short-term rentals? Or would they rather see less short-term rentals and the possibility of those development rights being
You
developed in
just
place?
said the valley. Isn't this for the entire county?
Yes, sorry. The valley is where the hard part is, right?
Sure. No,
Out
and I
west, it's
agree
not
with
an
that.
issue.
I
Right.
don't disagree.
Right. So yeah, you're exactly right. This is a code that would apply to the entire county. So I'm going to
So
go.
if a guy had a piece of commercial property that today you could put a 4-plex on,
Mhm.
and he thought, well, I want to put an 8-plex, I want to go up and put another level on above that.
Mhm.
He could buy the TDRs to do that.
That's right.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah. Now, if it's a commercial property or if it's a higher density residential property, it depends on, what that upper limit is on that density, right? If it's only allowing a 4-plex, but then he goes and buys TDRs and moves them to that upper level, yeah, we can certainly make it, craft it to be shaped that way.
Yeah.
What I was more specifically writing this towards is, let's say somebody has a single family residence and it's a faceless corporation from out of the state, and they come in, they buy it specifically to run a short-term rental out of it. Well, they not only have to buy that property and, whatever rights go with that property, they've also got to buy another development right from somewhere else and move it here, retiring it out of the open space.
From somewhere else in that same area, because I don't want them to be transferring a development right from the lower valley to take it to the upper valley.
We would need to specify exactly.
Or
where
from
it's going.
Causey to the,
Yeah.
Good point.
You'd have to specify sending and receiving areas
That's right.
within
And
geographic area.
Right, so
It'd be easy to do.
I believe this does that. I believe we take
Okay.
whatever the sending areas from the form-based zone
Yeah.
is and say that you could take out of these areas and move to your single-family residence and then do a short-term rental there.
And let it be known for the record that it's not our intent to be transferring that far.
Right, from out west.
No.
Yeah,
Yep, just
right.
keep it contained within.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we want to keep it contained to the geographical area.
Right, so that's an option to transfer development rights into a short-term rental license for people who aren't owner occupants. And it's one that we wrote in the code just for you guys to consider, not necessarily one that we're even recommending, just looking for ways to execute the general plan as well as the Ogden Valley general plan, as well as finding options for landowners. If you're committed to the idea that only people who occupy owner occupants of the residents can do the short-term rentals in those residential zones, then the paragraph that stipulates how that works would be the one that we use, and we just strike the other one. Okay, and I'll walk you through that in just a moment. I did schedule about an hour. I know we're a little bit late on this, and so I'll try and be as quick and efficient as we can with our time. There are a number of definitions that need to be modified just to make this ordinance work well. One of the things that we're diving into is the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. As we look at STRs and some of the best management practices of STRs, we notice some of the other jurisdictions, the way that they allow short-term rentals might affect accessory dwelling units. And we need to take a position on whether or not accessory dwelling units can be short-term rentals or not. And so you'll see that I get into the accessory dwelling unit ordinance that we just adopted a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and make some tweaks to that to make sure we're clear on what we mean. Defining what owner occupancy is also is in the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. And so we had to just finesse that language just a little bit. So as you go through, I'm looking on page 1, going over to page 2, you just see some definitions that are changing, including accessory dwelling units. Everywhere in the definitions or anywhere else in the code where we use the word nightly, we're removing and changing it to overnight lodging because we want to get away from the term nightly rental. And so just the word nightly is going away.
So Charlie, you haven't run any of this by the planning commissions yet.
So the initial draft did go by,
Several years
did
ago.
go through both planning commissions. Western Weaver was fine. Yeah, 2
I
years
remember
ago.
that. They approved it.
Yeah, and Ogden Valley had a lot of concerns with it and essentially rejected it.
Right.
Okay, just kind of peruse through here. So redefining what a detached lockout is. Detached lockout, I believe, was defined as an amendment to the DRR1 zone primarily. We found so much similarities in how that is governed and a lot of similarities and inconsistencies that we just redefine it to be more efficiently used for both of those, the DRR1 and short-term rentals. Defining what a development right is, defining what a residential development right is.
So where did you redefine what a lockout is?
Uh,
You've done away with it there, but I don't see where it's redefined.
So we'll go down to the L's, lockout.
Oh,
detached.
okay,
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So to create our the big TDR ordinance, transferable development right ordinance. When I say the big one, that's the one that creates the overlay, sending, receiving, neutral zones. We've kind of started having that conversation with you guys about 6 months or so ago.
Right.
We need to define what a development right is, just plain and simple. And then defining what a residential development right is. Because right now, when we do TDRs, we're only talking about transferring residential development rights. We're not talking about transferring commercial development rights or anything like that. If you do like the little section of this that allows you to transfer a residential development right and turn it into a short-term development right, you can see how there's a difference.
Say that again, if you.
If you adopt the section that allows you to transfer a residential development right into a short-term development right, so moving a residential from the open space.
I understand.
into this, you can see how you're changing from a residential development right into a different type of.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So
I'm
just
with you.
defining what these rights are, property rights being that bundle of sticks, well, you need to define what each of these sticks are. This stick is to create a residential development, and this stick is to create an STR, for example.
I'm with you.
Okay.
Okay, we need to define what the primary dwelling is. And what we've done with primary dwelling is we've just tried to say essentially what is the tax assessor calling the primary dwelling. So when somebody is an owner occupant, that is their primary dwelling. We also, when we look at primary dwellings, need to say if we've got accessory dwelling units on the property, we need to know which one's the accessory and which one's the primary. So just being very clear the difference between the two. So redefining accessory dwelling unit, defining internal accessory dwelling unit. So state code changed. Was it this last year or the year before, where the state said counties and cities, when it comes to creating an internal accessory dwelling unit, you have to allow internal accessory dwelling units in your community. And so it kind of took our ability to regulate what happens inside of a building away. So we're just defining what we think an internal accessory dwelling unit is here and just making it compliant with state code. And then a detached accessory dwelling unit. So detached accessory dwelling unit is the opposite of an internal accessory dwelling unit. Okay, and then owner occupied. This is what we've listed as the definition of owner occupied. So this one's going to be really important. It's on page 4. The phrase owner occupied dwelling unit means a unit that is occupied by the owner of record for a minimum of 7 months of the calendar year, except that temporary leave for religious, military, or other legitimate purposes does not disqualify owner occupancy. A primary dwelling is designated by the county assessor, or sorry, as designated by the county assessor, qualifies as an owner occupied dwelling unit unless clear evidence exists to the contrary. So hopefully an owner occupant has already has their residence listed in the county assessor's office as their primary dwelling for taxation purposes. And so that'll make it a little more simple for us to sort through what is an owner occupant building and versus what is not owner occupied.
Why'd you use 7 months?
It's the number that the assessor's office has used. We can use whatever number you want there. We could do 6 months or more. We could do 10 months or more. We just stuck with what the assessor's office says if they're living there for the
I like
primary
the
portion of the
consistent.
year.
Yeah. Well, I guess the question is, there's an easy way to determine that. If that's their primary residence, you can check make them file the return or
Yep.
proof of primary residence, which is clarified by federal law.
I agree. And so,
So, I mean, what I don't want to do is complicate this. You got federal and state
Right.
regulations that deal with everything we just talked about.
right,
I don't want to get contrary to what
what they
that,
have.
yeah.
Right. Okay.
Number
So,
one, they've got
Good point.
both the federal and state tell us what to do, not vice versa.
let me make sure.
So I just want to stay in conformity. I mean, federal tax legislation is very clear on primary and secondary residence.
Right, okay, and that's why that last sentence, a primary dwelling as designated by the county assessor qualifies the owner occupied. And so if that is an easier way to define it, maybe we just take out the 7 months, or sorry, 7 months of the calendar year.
Yeah, I think you just say it's a primary residence as determined by, under federal statute.
Okay.
That way everything's tied together.
I like it.
And that way, if there's any
Yeah.
question on it, you say, bring in your tax return. I want to see where your primary residence is.
Yep.
Because they're not going to lie on that more than likely.
And there was, hopefully, there was a resident who actually asked, how are we going to determine this? And
Yeah.
I thought tax return would be a great way to.
Tax return's the way to prove it.
Which we'd also have a section of this code that requires them to submit whatever tax evidence that they paid their taxes on it for their.
Okay, good.
So sorry, give me just a second, resave this. So I can-
That's a good way to do it.
Oh, and I invited Jason here because Jason, at the end of last year, we did go out for bid on a third-party enforcement agency. And so Jason has those bids. Now, we did postpone awarding that bid until after we get everything adopted, but
Okay.
just wanted to let you know.
Good.
All right, okay, moving down, just making a couple of minor tweaks that we noticed need to be done in some of these. Okay, here's detached lockout on page 5, as well as a definition for lockout sleeping room. And we moved detached lockout next to lockout sleeping room just because it flows better in the ordinance there. Basically, a detached lockout means a detached lockout sleeping room on the same lot with single, 2, 3, 4 multifamily dwellings, condominiums, condominium rental apartments, private residence clubs, townhomes, residential facilities, timeshare, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all or any portion of any other residential use with separate or common access and toilet facilities, but no cooking facilities, except for the allowance of a hot plate and or microwave, which may be rented independently on the main unit for short-term rentals. So we're basically saying this constitutes a detached lockout. So in the DRR1 zone, specifically Powder Mountain, we wanted the ability to have a residential dwelling and then maybe a few detached. It's just master suites that are separated from the main, but they're not independent of the main. So basically, if they're going to use the kitchen facilities or whatever, they've got to go into the main building to use that common area. Okay. Let me get you down to brass tacks here. Defining what a long-term rental is, defining what a short-term rental is. We're just saying a short-term is anything less than 30 days, long-term is greater than 30 days. Defining what a transferable development right is. The term transferable development right, also known as a TDR herein, means the removal of a residential development right from one lot or parcel and transferring it to a different lot or parcel. Okay. We provided a couple of minor tweaks to the enforcement provisions of the ordinance, because we do know that the STR enforcement is going to take a little bit more of a little heavier hand, I think, especially when it comes to fines and fees. And so we just wanted to make sure whatever we wrote there isn't in conflict with our current enforcement provisions. Okay. Now, the next few pages is just listing out the zones and when short-term rentals are allowed in those zones. And so most of our residential zones, as well as forest zones, we allow short-term rentals, but we list them as two different types. One is short-term rental, the other is short-term rental, comma, owner occupied, so an owner occupied short-term rental. Okay, so in the agricultural zones, basically AV3 in the valley, not permitted as a short-term rental, but it is permitted as a owner occupied short-term rental. And then the other A zones out west would just be permitted regardless of whether it's short-term or owner occupied short-term. Anyway, so I'll flow through the rest of those.
What does AV stand for again?
AV stands for agricultural valley.
Okay.
Yeah, so Agri Valley. You can see how each of those are just inserted into each of the zones.
So Charlie, clarify something for me. When you're saying owner occupied, you're talking ownership. You're not requiring the owner be there during short-term rental.
So that's part of the conversation we need to have today, and I've got that section of
Okay.
code right here. So I'm on page, let's see, starting with page 17. That's where the chapter for short-term rental regulations specifically start.
Okay.
We've got a purpose and intent. We've got applicability, and under applicability, flowing down to page 18. We've got a part A, a part B, and a part C. So part A says, if you're gonna do a short-term rental, you've got to do it in compliance with this code. Part B says owner occupancy when required. I'm gonna read you the specifics of this paragraph. Except as provided in this chapter, the short-term rental of a primary dwelling unit is only allowed when the owner, who is also the applicant for the short-term rental license, has occupied the primary dwelling unit for no less than 2 consecutive years. Now, question for you guys is 2 years. Does that work for you guys?
That conversation starts by itself in as much as, so they can't do anything unless they've owned the unit for 2 years.
Right.
They can't come in from an outside place, New York or Chicago, buy a place and
They're
then
gonna
just
have to
start renting. They're gonna have to live
They're
there.
gonna have to sit on it and live there. Yep.
Okay,
Now, one of the concerns that I've heard from a few members of the public is what about fractional ownership? If it's owned by 7 or 8 different people, what qualifies that as owner occupancy? And I
Right.
think in those circumstances, we would say if any one of those 7 people occupies that dwelling as their primary dwelling unit, then that would fall in line with this for 2 years.
Yeah, then you'd make one of the fractional owners live there for 2 years.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Through taxes?
For the entity that owns it, or do you mean for the,
Well, I guess that's the question,
I think it's gonna be more than taxes that we ask for.
because if they
Because
they
they
have
police
the,
it.
if they're
I'll
paying
tell you in a second.
full price on the taxes, this is a second home, or if they're not getting the exemption, then they're not a full-time resident, right? So
So number one, they have to be getting the primary residential exemption. Number two, they've got to be able to prove that they're not lying to the tax assessor.
can an entity get that?
Primary? Possibly not. I don't know the answer to the
I
question.
guess that's
Can
the
what?
question. Can an entity get the primary tax exemption?
With
Because
fractional,
Yeah, I mean,
like a trust,
if they own houses all over the place, or if this entity owns properties in other states and everywhere else, how are they showing that this is the
the primary,
primary?
it depends on how they file their tax return.
So, yeah, I'm still,
The answer to
That's a
that
good
is probably,
question.
that'd be pretty hard to do. If you have fractional ownership, you're probably not going to file your tax return other than under that ownership, whether it's an LLC or
Right.
whatever that entity may be.
so maybe that precludes them from doing this.
maybe, and we want to be careful.
More than
because
likely.
When it comes to fractional ownership,
Probably does.
what if it is owned by a trust? What if it's
Right.
owned by, a family that has a corporation or something like that? Yeah, an LLC. But it's still the entity or so one of the persons in the trust or one of the persons within the LLC is still the occupant of it. I guess it would come down to whether or not they can get that home classified as a primary dwelling unit. So first, classified as a primary dwelling unit. Second, we can ask a lot of questions. You know, do you have a library card? What's on your garbage billing statements? Where are you filing your taxes? You know, so there's a number of things that we can ask to get a sense of confidence that it is indeed owner occupied. Okay. Okay, so owner occupied for no less than 2 consecutive years preceding the application for a short-term rental license. The owner occupant shall be on site. So here's the question for you, Commissioner Ford. The owner occupant shall be on site during the short-term rental of the primary dwelling unit, or shall provide a responsible agent as required in the responsible agent section a little bit further down, when not available to fulfill those responsibilities. If the owner occupied dwelling unit is a separate dwelling unit from the short-term rental unit, so if they've got multiple units on the property, like an accessory dwelling unit, the owner occupied dwelling unit shall not be rented or leased while the owner occupant is away from the property. So if you've got an accessory dwelling unit and you've got your primary dwelling unit, but the owner actually lives in the accessory dwelling unit, for example, well, actually, sorry, let me flip that. If you've got an accessory dwelling unit and a primary dwelling unit, and the owner lives in the primary dwelling unit, and they leave for a small period of time, few months or whatever, maybe they're snowbirds or, you know, they summer somewhere else, they wouldn't be able to rent out while they're gone the primary dwelling unit. That makes sense. And so essentially it's saying they should be on site when they're renting. Or when it's
Now,
being
but it
rented
gives
out.
them the option. Let's say somebody goes on a mission for 2 years.
Yes,
You know, we have to have an option there that they could hire a professional manager.
Or let their kids stay in it, or
Yeah,
so letting their kids stay in it and
Yeah.
manage it that way. Yep, so that's,
Yeah.
it's either they're there on site or they have a responsible agent.
so that would still apply.
and do we have a definition on responsible agent?
We do, and that's a section here. I'll get right down to it in just a minute. So let me finish off that section here. So if the owner occupied dwelling unit is a separate dwelling unit from the short-term rental unit, the owner occupied dwelling unit shall not be rented or leased while the owner occupant is away from the property. You know what? I'm going to take back what I just said. It is if the primary dwelling unit is the short-term rental and the owner is living in the accessory dwelling unit in the backyard.
Right,
If the owner goes on vacation or whatever, they're not renting out both the primary and the accessory. Whichever one the owner occupies stays vacant during that period of time.
I see.
yeah, okay,
Just trying to make sure we're not getting multiple short-term rentals on the same
yeah,
property.
makes sense.
That's the goal, it sounds like.
Yeah, of that sentence, yep. Okay, this owner occupancy requirement is not applicable to a short-term rental located in the DRR1 zone, form-based zone, commercial valley recreation zone, forest residential zone, the FR3, not the FR1 zone, and the MPD overlay zone. So we created, if any one of these zones, mostly commercial and recreation in nature, if they specifically allow short-term rentals, you don't have to have it owner occupied. So
Right.
all of the properties up there that are currently lawfully doing short-term rentals, you know, essentially would not have to have owner occupancy first. Okay, short-term rental of detached accessory dwelling unit. So if you do have an accessory dwelling unit, here are some regulations, and this is where the TDR component comes in. So in the Ogden Valley, a short-term rental of a detached accessory unit shall only be allowed in one of the 2 following circumstances. This provision also applies when the owner occupant of the primary dwelling unit occupies a detached accessory dwelling unit while the primary dwelling unit is used as a short-term rental. So the idea is you live in the house, but when you're renting the house out as a short-term rental, you're moving out to the pool house for a little while this one's being rented out. You're still on site, so you're still able to manage the operations of your short-term rental and your tenants. But you take take up occupancy for the 4 days or whatever out in the pool house. Okay, so number 1, the lot has a base density as defined in chapter 101-2 of at least 3. 1 for the primary residence, 2nd for the detached accessory dwelling unit, and the 3rd for the right to rent it out as a short-term rental. So this is the TDR transferring from a residential dwelling unit into an STR. Does that make sense? So let me recap again. You've got a main dwelling, you've got an accessory dwelling. You can rent out your main dwelling and move out to the pool house, but you've got to have a base density of at least 3. 1 for your house, 1 for your accessory dwelling unit, and then 1 to rent your house out as an STR. That makes sense? So, a little
No.
confusion.
That didn't make any sense to me.
Doesn't make sense in
If you
policy.
own, yeah, if you own your house, why do you have to have an STR?
That's
You mean a TDR?
TDR, right?
Or yeah, TDR.
That's the question for you guys.
That's the,
Should we, in this particular case?
that's where the rub comes.
Right.
So, under normal circumstances, if you don't have an accessory dwelling unit in the back, right? Your dwelling unit is owner occupied. You are renting it out as a short-term rental, and while you're renting it out, during that rental, you're on site, or you've got a responsible agent who can be on site within a certain period of time, right? That's condition number 1. That's circumstance number 1, right? Or circumstance number 2, you've got your dwelling unit and you build an accessory dwelling unit specifically so you can rent out your home as a short-term rental. This way you're moving out of your home into your pool house or whatever. In order to do that, now, so you're putting, so that you can create an STR, you're putting 2 homes on the property essentially. So you're increasing the intensity of the use of a home. That's why, that was the intention behind requiring a transfer to come in so that we can kind of offset or balance out that additional
So-
intensity of use.
Let me give you an example. I had a niece who ended up having some health problems.
Mhm.
And her husband had to quit work for about 16 months. We need to mute that. All right there. Anyway, so. for
Mike Walter, will you please mute yourself? Mike Walter, please mute.
So you can mute that too, Laura. I'm going to. Okay, so anyway, during that 16 months that they were having these issues, it's down the lower left.
He just really did. It's coming up in his mind.
He unmuted again.
Anyway, during that time, they moved in with my sister, who was about a block away, and just rented their house for, put in a short-term rental pool and rented it during that 16 months, many times. And then once her health started being restored, they could move back into the house. They did that. Well, that saved their house for them. They would have had to sell that if it hadn't been for that, because of the financial burden during that 16 months.
Yeah.
So I've always remembered that and thought, well, we ought to save this right for other people.
Yeah.
So if they want to, this literally can prevent them from selling their house or not.
I agree. And so that comes down to the question, when your family was in that circumstance, we didn't get to part 2. So this is part 1 and part 2. Under part 2, if they would go out and still purchase that transferable development right and move it to the property, they could still do what you're suggesting they do, move in somewhere else, and that STR essentially could still function, but they'd have to purchase the transferable development right. So that's the
Yeah,
question.
see,
I'm
and
asking you
that's,
guys.
I don't want to have to do that.
Okay.
They own the property. It's their right already. Why should they have to purchase the ability to do that?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just don't agree with that. It's already your property. You don't have that right.
and that's certainly a policy question. So
Yeah.
I've got this all listed under short-term rental of a detached accessory dwelling. That's actually not intended to be.
So
rolled
you're
in.
not in favor of requiring a TDR
Right, exactly. On your own property.
on your own? No, I get it.
Right.
What about if somebody comes in and buys a property, a home, without the intention of being their primary
Yeah.
resident?
Then they gotta live.
Well, that's something we gotta talk about,
So that's the only case I see a possible use of a TDR.
because as the governor said in his talk, and I didn't prescribe to this originally, but I do now, I think he's right. That is part of our housing shortage. is the fact that these people are locking these homes up and then use them for income. And they're not licensed. We don't know how many there are. You know, and it's not their personal residence at the time. They've actually chose to go out and start a business doing this. And by doing so, they are affecting the market. And so when you do that, all of a sudden now you're really a business. So you should have a license.
Well, I think everybody should have a license, but I think,
Why a TDR to do that?
well, I think you hit it right on the head. If we're going to say, look, if you own your own home, you're in there, you're going on a 2-year mission, and you decide you want to do a long-term rental month to month, that's your decision. If you want to do an STR, that's your own decision under certain requirements. But the question is for those coming out of state or going to use that as a business enterprise, would we require them to do a TDR, to purchase a TDR, just as an offset to those that we differentiate them from those that owner occupied?
Well, a long-term rental wouldn't require a TDR,
No,
only a short-term.
only a
rental.
short term.
So if the people,
No,
whatever the circumstances, they leave town for a year or 2 or 5, whatever.
right.
If they decide their business plan is to be a long-term rental. that's
No
what it
TDR.
is. But if they say, hell, we're gonna do a short-term rental, then they've got to have the TDR to do it. And what you're saying is if that property has a house on it and an accessory dwelling unit, they're gonna need 1, 2, and then a third one to
For the STR. Okay.
So
So
what?
STR. They're gonna need a third TDR for the STR.
Yeah, well, that's my point. I don't know why you have to buy a development right when you already have the rights. You have them already. And the law provides you to do an auxiliary dwelling unit, so they're yours. So why do you have to get a TDR to lease
That's a
one out?
question. So you're basically saying, look, you're gonna pay an extra fee to do that, to operate that as an STR.
Right,
It's just an additional fee.
well, then let's charge the fee,
So, yeah, no, I mean,
but not a TDR. Because a TDR
the additional,
makes no sense to me.
yeah, and that's really, either way, we could nix it
Yeah.
or move forward with it. The additional fee, instead of just handing the county money, you're actually handing the community money.
right, to
for-
pick,
for-
based upon where you
Theoretically
want,
speaking, to go reduce density, and so you're.
where do you want the
reducing
benefit
impact.
to go?
Right.
But I think we're clear, we should differentiate between an existing owner, occupant, and somebody that comes in as an investment.
Yep.
2 different scenarios.
I'm okay with that.
Make sure, I've spent a month or 2, let me make sure I've got.
Yeah, this ends up being complicated. You, when you start thinking of principles now.
Yeah.
You just say, okay, now the principle of,
Right.
you own your property. Does it matter if you occupy that property? You own it, so what's the difference?
No, I mean, you heard it from Representative Musselman the other day. Half the people out there say, don't regulate me. Half the other people say, take them away. Don't
Yeah,
let it, don't
that's
allow
true.
any STR. So
Right.
what side? do you
Well,
follow?
and as Musselman said, you just can't control it as much as you want to.
Yeah.
It's just about an impossibility, and the state has come to the point where they've said, uncle, we agree, you can.
All you can do
Well,
is,
not just our state, the states that are heavy like Florida and Hawaii, and you're not
Yeah.
ahead, yes. These states that get all these, that have been doing this for a long, long, long time.
California,
California. Well, you know, around your Disneyland area and that kind of
No,
stuff.
right around Disneyland,
That's
you're
true.
right.
no. I wanted to run something by you, since I was just at an STR this past weekend.
Oh, you went to California, did it?
I
So
went-
you rented a home?
Yeah, so a little place that had, and here it is right here, neighborhood guidelines.
Huh?
I think you guys would, I
You
think
take a picture, oh,
they hit this on the head, in my opinion. So here it is.
Paso Robles.
This comes from the city itself.
That's the name of the city?
That's the name of the
Paso
city.
Robles, yeah.
So here's what you need to know. Important, good, so they call this the good neighbor policy, and that's all it's about, is being a good neighbor. So what are their problems? Parking, occupancy limits, dogs, trash, recycling, noise.
Same ones we hit.
So is that different than us? Not a
No, we
lot.
didn't say dogs, but all the rest
So
we did.
Well, we
here-
should.
Here it is, talks about your dogs, talks about trash and recycling, talks about noise. But here's your most important thing, is occupancy limit. and it sets, okay, number in your party, 2, 3, 4, up to 5, total overnight occupants, additional daytime occupants, so there is a difference here, total daytime occupants, and how many parking spots are required.
Look
Now-
at that.
So now the key component here is this is a 2 enforcement, in my opinion.
Two-pronged enforcement.
Two-prong enforcement. So I didn't rent this, but the gal, one of my friends that did this for me, or did this for us, basically got 2 emails and 2 phone calls from, I'm gonna call it the management company, the agent, whatever you wanna call it,
Mhm.
prior to it, to confirm how many people in there, do you have any dogs? How many cars are gonna be there?
Mhm.
Basically verifying that, and then sent out an email to her to say, here's what you've said. Now, if we find you in violation, now this didn't come from the city. This came from the management company, I'm gonna call what you call an agent.
Yeah.
So to me, this is as important as having enforcement. And then I've got another sheet here.
Agreed.
That has what they call a short-term rental hotline that's advertised on the website. So if a neighbor had a problem, they call the short-term hotline, which would then go to the enforcement. But I think there has to be a differentiation between the enforcement from, okay, who violates this, who gets into it, and the management. What I'm gonna call property management.
Agreed. So yeah, two-pronged, and when
Pretty slick, Gage.
Yeah,
when the
thought you guys
threat,
like that.
when the threat is you're gonna lose your license.
Yeah.
A management company or an agent or an owner is gonna be pretty particular about who they're renting it out to and being the
No.
enforcement.
So why would an owner go through that for that exact reason? Is because now if they're found in violation by the city, i.e. they're found in violation or number of violations, whatever that turns out to be, they would lose that license.
Mhm.
And they
That's
don't
right.
want to do that.
That ability,
The ability to be an STR.
Everything you just mentioned is built into this code.
Okay,
Yeah, that's perfect.
but here's a
posting on the
working
property.
example.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, we were down there, we had 4 of us in a 3-bedroom home. I don't think the neighbors even knew we were there. But, so this can work in communities. If everybody wants to be a good
Yeah.
neighbor. Now, some people don't want to be good neighbors.
then they're not gonna be invited back, and the people that rent the home to them won't have a chance to do it anymore.
That's,
Well, and the people who rent the home, they don't want to lose their license.
That's what
This
I'm
is a big
saying.
deal to them.
no, that's what I say. So that's why I don't, if anybody's doing this as a business, they're probably not going to be opposed to these guidelines.
Right,
So
I
I
agree with that.
want to offer an observation that I think is going to make a lot of folks who live in the valley upset with me for even doing, but we've got hundreds.
Here you go, Charlie. You
Hundreds
get
of
everybody
short-term
upset.
rentals, yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody are all riled up, hundreds of them at any given point in time. A peak ski weekend might even be in 1,000 or a little over 1,000. And we have a list of 32 enforcement cases out of hundreds of rentals. And so I think right to your point, if you're a
But
good
when you say
neighbor,
enforcement, those are complaints that have come into us that we had to respond.
yes, complaints that people, now some of those 32 have multiple complaints from multiple different people. There is enforcement happening. A lot of people say the county's not enforcing this. We are enforcing.
We are.
this. Now, what might be happening is people may know that 3 or 4 doors down, there's a short-term rental going on that isn't stopping. But
What about,
someone didn't call and complain about that short-term rental.
Yeah, I was just
Someone
gonna
hasn't
say,
called and complained about
what
hundreds
about
of
all the
short-term
people who don't know where to call? How are they people doing this? Though the people that don't know. The other part of this is communicate with all
Yeah.
the people, other people up there.
and making sure the
They
hotline
know-
number is posted.
Hotline, exactly.
But the point that I'm trying to make is the problem that we're having apparently is 32 rentals, not hundreds that are actively happening right now. So there are good management entities or good
There are.
owners who are using this non-right, something that's not allowed in our current code as a right, to actually rent their properties out. And it's either not affecting the neighbors or the neighbors just don't want to tell them.
Well, here's the other thing. How many licenses do we have in all of Weaver County?
Yeah,
40.
39 or 40.
Yeah, and some of those are in the lower valley.
Oh, yeah.
So-
we've got-
That doesn't, well, Ogden City has 14.
Okay, so if there's still 40, so that means in your deal though, that's 14, so that's 36. So assuming that all of them are compliant, getting a license,
Right.
right?
That's
That's
it.
the thing too, is there are a lot of people I still think fly under the radar.
Uh-huh.
And
And they're
so
they're
that's-
flying under the radar and not being complained about by their neighbors.
So, well,
So, I mean, that speaks to the good management or a good.
So what
owner
you're saying
side.
is there's a lot of good management practices going on. If you've got hundreds that we're told of STRs up there, and you have 32 complaints,
Yes.
that would indicate that somebody's doing a pretty good job of management.
Yes, now there's a lot of dialogue going on with folks in the valley who say, well, we're not going to complain because the county's not enforcing. It's kind of ridiculous because we
No.
can't enforce if we don't know that it's an issue. We're not
Right.
driving around looking for short-term
don't
rentals. It
buy that.
relies on the neighbors to say something. But the properties that the neighbors have said something about, we're watching. Short-term rentals is also hard to enforce, right? Because you get someone out there renting it, we send them a notice of violation or whatever it is, they stop doing it, and they stop for a minute or two. Well, they're done, they stopped, and then they do it again a month or two later.
Sure.
And so we're going back out. This ordinance actually tries to address that as well. Because right now, under the way that our current ordinances are, if they've stopped, they've stopped, they've come into compliance.
So how do
Until
we
they
find
fail.
out that if there actually are?
If they actually are renting,
Yeah, how do we find out?
so
We
that's.
talk about hundreds.
Right.
How do we find out if they're actually an STR?
That's where we need a third party. We don't have the tech or the sophistication to scrub the websites to find that out, but our
Okay.
third party partners can. The private sector they've already come up with the tools to do this. We've got 2 bids from 2 different entities at
Okay.
2 very different price tags that tell us that they've got little spiders that crawl through the interwebs and find common images, common descriptions, and consolidate those commonalities into this is the property we're talking about, and here's the very likely location of where that property is. And so
So,
we know exactly the
At
address.
this
that-
point, can we have Jason explain that to
Yeah,
us?
yeah, might as well.
So Jason, when we talked to Musselman last week, when he was in here, he talked about how hard this is to manage it, to even find these folks. You just,
Just to clarify, it's not hard to find them. It's, we can't use the
Right.
online aggregators to target.
To enforce it.
right, so when I say hard to find them, I meant as a county government. Because of what you just said, we can't use those things to do that. So to just say you can't have them it just isn't gonna work.
There is some proposed language coming out of the league that will not, and again, we're in the very early stages, right? There's a lot of discussion that needs to take place, but that won't undo by any stretch, but add some language to the novel language that should ease up some of the capabilities to do so.
Yeah, and the way that the state code is written, it doesn't say that we can't use the fact that they posted to enforce, it just can't be the sole mechanism.
Yeah.
And so if we've got a photograph of out-of-state license plates or multiple out-of-state license
Right.
plates over multiple successive periods of time, images of different entities or people or parties renting these units out. Somebody calls enforcement, our enforcement folks go out there if they can, same day. And they go up, they take pictures and try and verify and validate. And in some cases, they can even search license plate ownership and figure out, all right, where do they live? Do they live there? Do they live out of state? We can look at last names. We can even look at relationships. Right now, we're enforcing against someone right now who keeps on saying, well, it's my sister, and my sister comes in every once in a while with some of her kids or some of her whatever. And so we're collecting information, takes a little while to do. Folks aren't super happy that it takes more than a year or two to figure this out, but we're collecting photos and information to determine whether or not if this really is a relative who is renting the property out. And so far, we're noticing it's not, they're different people and with different license plates and different,
Okay.
all that. So that evidence can go into enforcement.
So basically, this was the earlier part of this year, and I think the latter part of last year. Scott Perks, who was a trader, was the one that put this together, but yeah, we put this out. So we had 5 companies respond. I think you know, we had put a couple things out there as far as what we were looking for the services. So as Charlie had mentioned, first they go and they put their feelers out and they start figuring out what's out there. And they start building a database. And then there's additional services also that Charlie had mentioned where as they start finding these properties, these people and so forth that are potentially doing the wrong thing, then contact is made. I think what Charlie was email, phone and something else. Maybe even text message. So, and it goes on and on and on. I mean, I can go through line by line, or we can just kind of give you the basis of what this is, but the services are out there and all of these folks responded pretty quickly and seem to have their stuff together. So.
And
Did they give us a dollar with those contracts?
So the way Scott wanted it is he asked per property and just looking at this, the range was roughly $40 up to above 100 for each property that they're doing research on. And
What period of time?
let's see.
yeah, but that's in case of a violation, right?
Well, that's a violation.
Right, that's a violation.
Well, sorry, the $40 is about what it costs them to find these
Yeah,
issues.
right.
What we charge for the violation is up to us. But this is management per short-term rental, period. And your short-term rental license might be a certain cost that we charge, short-term rental enforcement, different costs if we want to, but they're just saying, this is the number that we calculated in your community on any given time, and our enforcement for this number is $40 or something.
Period of time, the agreement would be for a year, and then obviously we can extend that up to about 5 years. But I think there were at least 3 of them that pointed out that, again, as Charlie had stated, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a little bit of time. And so,
Hold on, clear. So you talk about, is it $40 for violation or $40 per property?
per property.
And
Alright.
that gives them the ability to flex how much they're charging.
And
the
how many
county.
properties do they say we have?
We haven't put it into we actually told them we have an approximate, right? And I can tell you what that
I
is.
think last August, it was like 600 properties.
Is that monthly or annual?
Annual.
Correct?
25,000 bucks.
Well, so the first bid I think it was 30.
3950 was the first.
This
40,000?
August
Yeah.
of 2022, we have 436 properties in Eden and 119 in Huntsville. 896 in the county as a whole.
Okay. So 40 times 896 approximately.
I mean, that includes incorporated, like
Oh.
Ogden City and stuff as well.
Okay, that's,
So the lowest bid was 40,000 and the higher bid was what, 80 something?
So I saw 75 on here and then a
we
couple
didn't include
of
Ogden
them
City.
submitted, they did it.
Huntsville.
They spread it out.
They spread it out, so I'd have to divide that by.
So one of the reasons it's hard to figure out exactly what the number is, because some of them have different modules. For example,
Right.
we can hire them to do the licensing side of things. We can hire them to do the
Okay.
initial enforcement letter side of things. We can hire them to just do their little crawlers and report back to us on where they think the issues are. They've got a few different tech modules that we can buy that gets us closer and closer to a higher level of certainty of being able to catch this.
Right.
So does any city or county inside the state require licensing today?
Yes. Yes.
Give me one, just
I have to get back into the
that's
research.
why I only asked for one. I thought you'd know one.
Well, Ogden City requires
Okay.
licensure.
Huh.
But they do not hire a third party enforcement.
Yeah, so they require, it, but they really,
You've
so
got,
that's why they have, how many licenses? Did you say like
14.
14?
That's why.
Okay, that's
Well,
why.
there you go.
I've got one 2 doors down from me. I wonder if it's licensed. I didn't even know it existed for the last year.
So Ogden City
With
doesn't do any.
336 on the market this month.
So you
many?
got 14 out of 336.
In Ogden City.
Approximately.
This,
So that's less than 1%.
Yeah, that's why they
So
have
we
14.
subscribe to the crawling service, just so we can get the data on occupancy and rate. The company that we utilize does not have any of that enhanced capability to do enforcement or
Right.
licensing or anything. It's purely from a DMO perspective to try to get a feel for what's happening in the marketplace.
Mayor of Garden City, I think, he was the one who started one of the first companies in this area that does this third-party enforcement. And so that started out here, and the call center is, I think, currently located in Logan City.
Okay.
For one of these companies.
Hmm.
So just interesting thoughts on how enforcement can go. Now, we've had a good conversation about, can we afford $40,000 just with the fees that we currently have? If you spread $40,000 out over the 40 currently licensed deals, I mean, you know what that cost is. It's just cost prohibitive. Now, the deal when it comes to fees, as you guys probably know, state code says that we cannot charge a fee that goes above and beyond what our expense is for the administration of whatever that program or that enforcement mechanism or whatever it is. I did talk to Cortland a little bit about that, who mentioned if short-term rental as a total thing is our program, then sure, we could charge a crazy fee for everyone who chooses to get licensed in order to meet that $40,000 expense. It just seems a little ridiculous to ask
Well, so
40 people to cover that.
the point
Can't with
of
40.
a fee is compliance and management.
That's right.
And if you want to drive people into compliance, not away from
That's right.
compliance, and if
That's
you
right.
charge them $1,000 a piece, you're driving them away from compliance.
Nobody's gonna do that.
That's right.
And so our suggestion is to have a relatively simple licensing fee. I think we're like $100 or $200 for that. I mean, it wasn't a really big fee. But then hit penalties hard. And so a lot of the $40,000 for the first couple of years will probably come from penalties. And we can even offer some incentives to the company to say, look, if you find enough of these things, we can get you, maybe a little extra on top of whatever our contract cost is, to motivate them to get finding those penalties. Now, over time, one of these companies, I can't remember if it was the lesser expensive or the more expensive, said that on average, they average about 90 to 95% compliance, which is about the best you could find in the industry right
Yeah.
now. A lot of these companies are looking at 75 or so
Yeah.
percent.
90% is a good
When you
rate.
get up like that, that's dang good.
Now,
Yeah.
the other thing that this ordinance dives into is what is compliance? Compliance is, well, you got to be licensed, right? You definitely need non-compliance if you're not licensed. And then you've got to follow the license and the rules. And so we've divided enforcement out into two different, but actually technically three different categories. One is a violation of the ordinance itself and not having a license. And then the other two is a major violation and a minor violation, where we're kind of nickel and diming people with small violations. You didn't take the trash out on time or whatever that little thing is, with a smaller fee. Or a major violation of you caused a really big issue. There's a huge party that your enforcement agency or your responsible manager didn't show up to within a certain period of time. That's a big deal. That's causing some big issues in the neighborhood. Multiple minors lead to a major. So we've kind of structured it that way. We use a third party to help us do that, because I don't think we have the in-house capability of making sure we keep all that organized.
No.
The big challenge that we're going to have in getting this program off the ground with two enforcement agents or two enforcement officers right now is just making sure that we're paying close attention to what the contractor's doing, how it's working, making sure we're looking at metrics and measurables. And, if really we're going to know we're successful if we have 600 licenses by the end of next year.
Well, I think under Cal's bill, he's talking about rolling back. To me, we need to basically see where the state's going with this. I don't want to get crosswise with the state. If we can roll back provision in Notwell and what Cal had, and I've talked to a couple members of the task force that would say, look, let's give a 90, 120 day period of
It's an
time
amnesty period.
that's basically free game. If you come in now during this 120 days, and we could probably coordinate that with enforcement agency, that, look, come in, pay you $100 setup fee, whatever we decide to set up fee. If you decide you don't want to come in then, and we find out later, then you charge them triple that.
$1,000 for the license?
Yeah, so I think that's the only way you're going to get people that would be motivated to come in and sign up, basically license.
I even suggest maybe something even softer, where if they're not causing a problem, maybe it's not a problem that we deal with, but as soon as somebody complains about them, then yeah, they've got to pay the $1,000 for the license. But someone who's operating without causing a problem to their neighbors, maybe they don't know that we've got the rules. A year from now, 2 years from now, if it hasn't caused a problem, they come in and they just pay whatever the normal. permit.
Well, based on that, you've got 32 people that will pay the bill.
Right, that's true.
And we're not gonna spend $40,000 and charge that to 32 people. And I'm not, we're definitely not going to charge every taxpayer in this county a fee to pay that for a certain number of individuals.
That's right, that's right. I can see that.
You
Okay.
know, again, one thing I'm dead fast set on is that the people that operate this, that are receiving the benefit, should pay for it.
I agree with that.
You know,
100%.
those little old ladies on the east bench don't need to pay part of it.
Somebody on the public record told me that I was naive to think that we have to have a way to pay for this program. The county has money, county can pay for it.
Yeah, where does that money come from? It's not our money.
Yeah.
First thing I understand, it's not our money, it's the taxpayers' money.
And the question, yeah,
All we do
is,
is decide where to go.
are we diverting money
Yeah.
from other programs that are
Right.
already in place to go towards this for, you know, a smaller population than what the entire county has?
Guarantee you that's exactly what's happening.
No, it wouldn't. It's like, so who gives up, you know, who gets their ox gored by taking that money out and not giving it to the homeless or somebody else?
That's right.
You tell me.
So Charlie, you're out of time. You pretty much done?
I am. Only question, wrapping up, TDRs, no TDRs. I think I heard resistance to the idea of
I'm a no
TDRs.
TDR guy.
Yeah, I'm probably no right now.
I want to just think about that a little more, because I think you brought that to us about 6, 8 months ago,
Mhm.
and we voted on it, didn't we? Did
Um,
we take some action, or we talked about it?
We talked about it, still didn't get a definitive answer on
Okay,
it. I'll pull it out, but think about it a little bit. If you could change your minds.
Is it in here? I need to review it in writing, just.
It is, yep. And what you're seeing in that version, sorry, that version shows if you're using an accessory dwelling unit, how the TDR works. But then there's the third component of that TDR, which is just somebody who's not an owner occupied at all could do it if they have three.
creates value in those TDRs, that's for sure.
Yeah,
I think,
and if I'm gonna be okay with the TDRs, the only place that I would say that that would apply would be for those investment properties. Somebody comes in without the owner occupant. If somebody owns a
Oh.
property, I don't think we should charge them a TDR.
That's the way I feel.
If somebody comes in and say, look, we're just gonna buy this home or whatever it is for short-term rental, then we might be able to justify TDR. Basically, that's,
How do you know?
or a fee, you know, all we're doing
Yeah,
is
a
charging,
fee. I'm all for
all
that.
we're doing is charging them a fee.
so right now we require a TDR for an accessory dwelling unit. Are we gonna allow,
We could look that up.
Hold
on
on.
the tax records.
State overrides that.
so internal? If
Internal.
it's an accessory dwelling unit inside the house, you're right, we can't charge a.
Oh, yeah, we're talking detached.
Yep, so if it's a
Okay.
detached accessory dwelling
Right.
unit, that's the other. I didn't explain
So we're
this.
requiring that today.
Today we are, if it's detached accessory dwelling. unit.
Okay.
So can they take that detached accessory dwelling unit and rent it out as a short-term rental? So far, I think what I heard. from
So
you
they've
guys-
already had to buy the TDR.
Mhm. They've already had to buy the TDR for
Yeah.
the accessory dwelling unit. Now, if we do allow them to use it as a short-term rental, that's where I have big concerns about cannibalizing our intention of allowing ADUs, which is to provide short,
Right.
provide.
Yeah, so under
affordable
this,
housing.
they'd have to buy another TDR?
So this would force them to buy
Yeah.
another one.
No, I am not in favor of that.
So should they be allowed to use their accessory dwelling units for STRs? I guess the question is either they're allowed to do it without the extra TDRs transferring in, or they're not allowed to do it at all.
They're already allowed to do it as an ADU.
As an ADU, correct.
Well, you know, it's almost semantics, the difference between ADU and SDR.
STR. Well, can the ADU be long-term versus short-term? So right now, today,
Well, that's what it comes down to. What you're
Yeah,
talking
that's what it
about.
comes down
Do
to.
we, if you have an ADU, do you force that to be long-term or can it be a short?
and today, it's long-term only.
Right.
So would
Right.
you allow it to go as a short term at some point in time? And if it can go as a short term, what's the cost for that? We're suggesting it should be an STR, but maybe it's just an extra fee. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe,
Well, I think-
maybe you guys are
Yeah, to
concerned
me,
about
that's
it.
the debate. I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about that.
Okay.
You know, what's the difference between having them go out and buy a TDR or pay a fee, other than you're taking one off of that, but nobody seems to
Well,
be too concerned
The
about that.
difference is a TDR is today, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000.
Yeah,
A fee is gonna be $1,000 or 500.
yeah, it's true.
So that's the difference.
So how much do you punish them?
Yeah. And I'm of the opinion that's already their right.
Yeah.
You know, this comes down to property rights.
That's what 50% or some of the people say, don't do any of this. Let us do what we want.
Yeah.
Why are you getting involved in the first place?
Yeah. That's not government's right to take our private property rights away. The other half says, take them away. Don't let anybody in.
Yeah.
The answer might be somewhere in the middle.
Okay, 2 years on primary occupancy or owner occupancy. You guys are okay with that time frame?
Yeah, that kind of stuff doesn't bother me too much.
No, I think that's good.
So, are you gonna send this to the, planning commission?
That's up to you guys also. You guys have already had a public hearing on this.
We have,
Uh-huh.
I'm of the opinion we ought to have, I mean, I hesitate voting something through the planning commission has the least seen. I mean, we've
Oh, absolutely.
overturned them on occasion, but this is a pretty big
This is
deal. I
not
really
like- I
think,
would, listen, I absolutely all of the planning commission to see this.
yeah, no,
It's been 2 years, they've had some time, you've done a lot of work on it, and they've seen,
you've had some new
Anytime.
commissioners come on board.
we've got good
Yeah.
people, let's let them take their eyes on it, put their eyes on it for a
Okay,
while.
you wanted to go back through the public hearing process and all that?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
I'm okay with
I mean,
that.
we waited this long for a lot of reasons. And again, I'm hesitant to jump ahead of the state until we at least have some type of bill file out there that we know what direction they're headed. Because there's no sense in us creating an ordinance
That we have to
won't-
undo later.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we have to
Agree.
go back and change.
Undo
And
later.
we're this,
We
We're
created
this
our
close
accessory
to it.
dwelling unit ordinance, and the next year, yeah, state code changed, and now.
Yeah. and I got a feeling they'll make some pretty good changes in that legislation.
Yeah, this really gets complicated, doesn't it? When you start doing this kind of stuff.
It sure does.
Good. Well, we're a little behind schedule, but
Half hour.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Commissioners.
thanks, guys.
Charlie, thank you. We appreciate all your efforts.
You're welcome. I'll let you know what the planning commission says.
Sarah, thanks for coming
Few weeks.
over.
Thanks, Sarah.
We appreciate it. We tried to treat you decent, violent.
Thanks.
Jason, thanks. Sir. I just know what
So,
you're saying.
Jason, what's the time schedule if we were
Our time when we took
on this contract?
I've got to go look at the details. We may be out.
Well, that's what I want.
We may have to put it back out again.
Yeah, I think we sent a notice already to all of them that said that we're not filling it yet.
Correct.
Not for
So
what you
We said that we
All right.
probably not
Here. Anyway, this meeting is a discussion on Nordic Valley project, water. And so, let's see, Sean, you're listed first. Are you the one that's driving this?
I will not drive this, but thank you for giving me the
Okay,
opportunity.
who is it?
I'm
Are we
going
gonna
to
turn-
either turn this over to Rick or to Charlie.
I'm happy to be here.
So, or is this a Nordic driven?
This is Nordic.
This is Nordic driven,
So Rhonda,
yes.
are you presenting?
I can call a quick, or do you want to present?
Oh, no, go ahead.
No? Okay, well, I've had the wonderful opportunity of working with John Perry since we decided to, we might need some water for this development. It seems,
Can't imagine.
I don't know, a little bit necessary. And he's been wonderful and has been guiding us through this process. We met a few weeks ago and as with our entire board, and they are going through a new process of coming up with an approval process, an application and approval process, which is going to take them a couple of months to get through. But what they really emphasized to us during that meeting is that they would really like to be more involved with the Weber County approval process and not just the Weber County approval process, but the Weber County intake process, so that they are aware of what applications are coming in that are needing water, especially an exorbitant amount of water, so that they can have that on their watch list, so that when the developers come forward and start asking for 200 connections, they can be aware of it, be on top of it, and it can actually streamline the process a little bit better. And are you guys comfortable if I turn it over to you guys?
Yes.
And you can then explain a little bit for more of what your desire is of what you would like to kind of intermingle with the community or the county.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and Commissioner Jenkins is very familiar with where our board is going on this. We have, as all areas do, have a limited water supply, and it's getting to the point where we're a little concerned on where all that water is going. And so we've actually, the board has approved some new water efficiency standards to include, now this is particular to the Wasatch Back, so Ogden Valley, Morgan, Summit counties. But we've got some new efficiency standards that now apply. And we'll be working with both individuals as they put in individual applications for water, for drilling wells, whatever it is, if they're using our water supply as the base of their well permit, or wholesalers or retailers, as we wholesale water to the retailers. So it kind of goes back to some of the legislation that was passed this last session to integrate land use planning with water use supplies. And I know that hasn't been in effect yet. I think it's next year. I can't remember when it actually gets implemented, but there was some time between the session and when it was
I think it
implemented.
was July 2030, isn't it?
2026.
2026?
Our plans have to be updated by 2026.
Oh, okay.
For water.
All right, so it's a few years
Okay,
down.
that is a few years.
Okay.
But we felt like with Nordic and others, especially in the Ogden Valley, they're talking to us about large water purchases. This would be an ideal time for us to be involved with the county commission and the developer, and for us to help us understand, what the water is going to be used for, what type of requirements that we are going to initiate on our side, and hopefully the county or other land use authorities in the valley are finding those efficiencies or those standards acceptable. And John's here, he can go over what those standards are, the latest standards, so if you'd like us to.
You probably already know this.
I do know.
I'd like to, I think I saw something come out in an email, but I'd like to hear it.
Sure, yeah, so like Scott's mentioned, seeing a need to make sure that our water, our limited water resources are used optimally and efficiently. We basically adopted some efficiency standards to be included in our replacement water contracts moving forward. So replacement water contracts, these are contracts that legitimize exchanges with the state, drilling of wells, releases from our reservoirs for use in indoor and outdoor applications. And so these standards essentially are going to change our minimum volume. So historically, we've had minimum volumes for exchange contracts, replacement water contracts, about 1 acre foot, and they're typically 1 1/4, 1 1/2, things like that. For single family residential to 0.65 acre feet is the maximum volume. And that's at 0.65 acre feet was calculated based on a state's requirement of 0.45 for indoor water use. They're not coming off of that until we have data that could substantiate something different. We anticipate that use actually being more around the 0.2 acre feet per year is what we generally see with residents along the Wasatch Front, things like that. A typical family of, 4 or 5 is using
For indoor use.
for indoor use,
right.
4 to 6,000 gallons a month. And so that's the 0.45 of the 0.65 acre foot contract. And then the 0.2, which makes up the balance there, is intended for minimal outdoor irrigation of replacement water contracts. And so from this point forward, our replacement water contracts will have a 0.65 acre foot volume limitation on them for those intended uses. If individuals want to do something beyond that, they want to do an orchard or some stock watering and things like that, that's outside of that 0.65 volume that we're talking about, the expectation would be they go and acquire water rights in the valley to substantiate and augment what they're getting through a replacement water contract.
Yeah, we feel like our priority ought to be, I mean, with a limited supply, our priority ought to be indoor residential use with some limited
Yeah,
outdoor use.
I
So
don't
we're not,
disagree with that.
or historically, we've had some agricultural uses, some large recreational uses, golf courses, whatever. We're limiting that significantly.
So we also have a square footage green.
Yes,
Yeah, and so
Yeah,
to
so-
substantiate that 0.2 acre feet being used for outdoor irrigation, we do have some guidelines, recommendations, requirements for what, that landscaping should look like. And it is 2,000 square feet turf grass on a residential unit,
2,000 square feet.
2,000 square feet of turf grass, and the balance would be for drip irrigation, things like that.
That's a little less than this room.
Yeah, not a lot of grass. Then how do you, are you in a meter then?
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and
So,
we're
yeah.
requiring meters as part of our application. The state already requires meters,
Right,
but we are going to require
starting
a
when?
meter
So now,
last month.
Well, although you've been requiring it on all new
Yes.
applications for years.
Exactly, but now we're giving some details on how the meter should be installed, and we're gonna be inspecting that installation and actually receiving meter readings.
So is that on any new applications or
It is.
existing?
It's new.
new,
New, okay.
moving forward.
So commissioners, if you recall, the water ordinance we adopted about a year and a half ago or so required all wells to be metered to their specifications. So it's good.
Right.
That's
I think
right.
It's great
I
that you
remember
guys
that,
are.
yes.
Yeah, we passed that, didn't we, Charlie?
Yeah, which their regulation, this new one, you'll have all the specs and you guys will do the inspection. So that takes a lot, I think, off of our guys as well. That's nice.
But we really didn't get into commercial
Right,
on this, and that's where Laurent is,
Okay.
right.
or
So-
Valley.
Maybe John can explain a little bit. more.
Yeah, so that, all those things I just discussed are specific to our individual replacement water contracts. So as we look at the retailer, so if we're wholesaling water to a commercial entity or a retailer of that water, our expectation would be that they're adopting standards and ordinances or whatever applicable legal documents they need to have in place that substantiate those requirements for their residential usage patterns. And then on the commercial side of things, landscaping does become a lot more stringent. It's 250 square feet of turf grass unless it's a designated recreation area. So cemeteries, park areas and things like that. At which point the expectation would be we'd be involved in conversations as those replacement water contracts are being generated, substantiate what those designated recreation areas are and their intended usage to incorporate some water efficiencies and have them be exhibits to our contracts that legitimize volumes of water to accommodate those types of uses. So it's essentially adoption of what we have for the single family residential, more restrictions for commercial, industrial, institutional, with allowances for discussed designated recreation areas. That we think is a great opportunity to involve the county on what those designated recreation areas
Right.
are.
Right, because right now, as part of the commercial uses, as in the design review, 20% of the site has to be designated as open space. And then within that open space, they have, X amount could be turf, no more than 50% of the 20% can be turf grass and so on and so forth. And so it's really gonna push that's gonna push a major portion of it to remain existing vegetation.
Basically, naturally.
Yeah, so that we're not gonna be pulling in irrigation for that.
So Rhonda, what do you guys plan on doing up there for your domestic water? Where do you plan on getting that?
For the domestic water, well, we, at this time, Nordic mountain water cannot provide that water. We could work with Wolf Creek Sewer, but I understand they don't have also the quantity at that time. So we were thinking having our well eventually shared with someone else where we could get the water from. And in fact, with what I just heard, do you guys, have you added a recycling option into your thought process? Meaning can we, for example, on other project, we recycle the entire sewer water, well, the dirty water, and we reuse that water in irrigation and all the right. Is it included in your thought process or not yet?
It's included in our thought process. It's not included in this application for new water, but we have a separate application for reuse of our contract water.
Okay,
And then it still has to go through the state reuse process, application
The
process.
state law allows that.
Yes,
yes,
but it's going to be limited with the Great Salt Lake impacts. I don't know. There's going to be some changes in the near future. I don't know what those
Agree,
will
but
be.
in the Upper Valley,
Yes,
yeah.
I mean, they are gonna
That's
allow
where-
you to do that.
that's where it makes sense.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because as I've watched what they're planning on doing with the Great Salt Lake, it really, in the areas that they're wanting to, really push for the lake
Effluent.
effect,
Oh, yeah.
that really doesn't build the Great Salt Lake back. What we need to do is actually have it up in the Wasatch
Watershed.
back, the Uinta area, so that we can actually build that snowpack that really does replenish, it actually feeds back into the Great Salt Lake eventually as it goes downstream.
So have you estimated your requirement yet?
Yes,
Yes,
yes, we've asked for, well, before the changes that we just talked about, we asked for 200 acre feet of additional water based on what we already have. But we may have to go a little above that for the number of units we are talking about.
And they have a little flexibility in this development because they have an existing contract with us for, is it about 200?
Well, we have almost, I think, 160. or so.
yeah, yes. So it's just
So
shy.
that 160 that they already have doesn't have the restrictions that this new application will have. So they've got some flexibility as a wholesaler, as retail, to do some things that somebody new that has a new contract with us wouldn't have.
So you've got 160 acre feet now?
They do,
Yeah.
yes.
You do, okay.
Overall, yes. When we,
Got it.
when we,
So they could move some water around.
Okay,
Because the intent is to utilize some of that green water for snowmaking and then irrigation on the golf course and
right.
around the buildings to keep the vegetation or
All
the-
land
the
applied.
the planting areas.
All land
green.
applied.
Yeah.
yeah,
Reuse.
we have a project to expand our snowmaking system. We're working on expansion of the snowmaking for the whole property. So that's something that maybe we may use this green water if possible. Right now, I know it's not really possible,
Mhm.
but if it becomes possible, that's something we would definitely look at. Because we want to store that water on the mountain. It's like having a reservoir, but it's on the
Sure.
mountain and then it goes back into the aquifer.
Absolutely.
The water would be clean to the point that we can drink it. That's our goal.
Yeah.
So we have to get it down to 2.5% nitrate level.
Mhm.
And right now, areas are using a 5% nitrate level for irrigation purposes and stuff. So for us to get this approved, we have to, with the state, we have to get it to 2.5%.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
it's in grams, but.
yeah. But we feel confident that we can do that.
So if the sewer system goes through Wolf Creek sewer, then it would be reused on other properties that are close to Wolf Creek, for example,
Right.
which is fine.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but the optimum for us would be to reuse it on the mountain.
That would require a separate contract.
The reuse, yes.
Yeah, you understand that.
Yes.
Yeah, because when we apply for that contract, we're gonna have to apply for where the reuse is going to go.
Sure.
So, yeah, all part of the process. So anyway.
Something we're asking Ron and his team to agree to, and I don't know if we've come to any kind of final conclusion on this, is if the sewer provider is also willing and able to provide water, that they'll just keep it under the same house, the same roof. But if for some reason the sewer provider is not willing or able to provide water, then they'll be able to go and look for whatever water they can, and working with Weaver based on that too. I'm assuming if you go under Wolf Creek water and sewer, they still need some kind of exchange.
Right now, I don't know. I don't think they have enough physical water.
Yeah.
On their side.
Yeah, that's the kind of the canon will. If they
Yeah.
won't serve, then at that point you go with.
I'm still waiting for a meeting with them. I've asked for a meeting. I'm still waiting for
Okay.
a date.
The date,
Well,
yes,
I know Miranda was on the call a second ago. I don't know if she's still on or not, but.
Looks like.
yeah. Yes, we're.
Okay, what else, Scott?
Well, really, I mean, there's some large, like I said, there's some large developments up there that are in the planning process, Osprey Ranch and several others. Eden Heights,
Sure.
but.
So how do we
same
coordinate?
types of issues.
How do we coordinate as a county with that? Because, and Charlie's here and Rick, I mean, right now, the way that's allowed by state law, somebody goes to Weaver Basin and comes in with a water right that they purchase, that's their water right. You're the water use authority. They come to us as a land use authority. We don't have the ability, even though we've been accused of doing of turning them away because they have proof of water. They've actually paid for that water. We're not the water use authority. You guys are. But so, and I don't disagree with what you're saying. It's how do we, make that work under state statute, maybe prior to 2026, that you have an idea or we have an idea. Is it just our planning department giving you a heads up on those developments?
I would love to have that coordination. I think that makes a
Okay.
ton of sense.
Yeah.
So if we could, even in the approval process, if we
Okay.
could come and meet together with the developer even, and just try to keep understanding what that process is. So other counties, we've had approvals by the counties before we've even
Right,
had been able to work out the water,
but
and
we don't do
that's
that.
backwards. So yes, I
But if
totally.
somebody walks in here with a will
Yeah.
serve from you, we don't question.
Right, but we
Correct.
don't, we don't approve any projects without the water authority saying, here's their will serve. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, they can come in and
Perfect.
they can come in and submit their application for
Yeah.
subdivision or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, but nothing would be approved by our planning commission or us until they show proof of water.
And Commissioners, it gets a little harder, more complicated, unnecessarily complicated, in my opinion, than that. If it's a water provider that already exists, for example, then whatever exchange happens with Weaver Basin that's going on in the back, behind the scenes, it's that water provider that's providing the will serve letter. And we're not even looking to Weaver Basin to even say anything about it. The only time we look at Weaver Basin to say anything about it is when it's a private well. And
Right.
even then, when it's a private well, we're still not looking at Weaver Basin to say anything about it. We're looking for the health department to provide us some kind of indication of feasibility. And we're assuming that the health department has at that point worked with Weaver Basin. Now, since the adoption of the new ordinance, anytime we get application that will be based on individual wells, We require pump tests, 48 hours pump test that shows us the yield, it shows us so yield clarity, and then proof that the water exchange has taken place, and that tells us then how much water Weaver Basin has allowed them to use.
Right.
And we've already, in a couple of cases, have caught, well, you didn't go buy enough water because you're showing that you've got this amount of acreage, and you need to go back to Weaver Basin and get more.
Right.
So I think that's our biggest point is that that's changed a little bit now with our restrictions on how much they
Right.
can contract for. They might have a 10-acre piece. We're allowing 0.65 acre feet, no longer
Period.
3
No
acre feet per
longer,
acre.
Yeah.
And so
So if they want
That's
to
a big
irrigate,
change.
then they've got to
they've
get
got to go find other water.
not from Weaver Basin.
Right.
That'll make our job a lot easier too. That's nice.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you very
That's
much.
good. So
Yeah.
Charlie, so I just want to be clear. So let's say that it's Taylor, it's not Weaver Basin, that they're gonna hook up to Taylor West Weaver or
Mhm.
whoever.
Mhm.
Do we have the authority to go to Taylor West Weaver and say, you can't issue water because we don't feel there's enough? I mean, so if they come in with the Taylor West Weaver will serve, what's our prerogative?
It's to assume that Taylor West Weaver is doing their job.
Okay,
It's a shall, not a may.
that's okay. I just want to clarify that because again, the water authority for these individual retailers, whether it's a private company, whatever, has the right. They have their own district in some cases. They can either approve or not approve that will serve.
Yeah, and Taylor West Weaver even more so because they are a district, so they are a governing
Yeah.
agency with a
Right.
governing board and
Exactly.
everything. If it's a private water company that we feel like is being mismanaged, I mean, probably have Cortland in the room to say this, but there, or one of the attorneys, but there's always the compelling countervailing public interest provision in state code.
Right.
If we have a lot of evidence to suggest the water company's not managing appropriately, then we can pull that card and say, look, water company.
Yeah, but that's a management issue.
It is.
And,
is.
the fact of the matter is, we didn't organize the district, the state did.
Right.
So normally the state is the one that takes an action, and then they come to the county and say, you fix it now.
That's
Or we
right.
have to end up replacing a board or something
That's
like
true.
that.
That's
But
exactly.
that's not even, normally that's outside of our purview.
We don't get it till it goes back.
That's right.
That's-
Till
that's
it
right.
goes back.
Now, if we know for sure that there's a problem with it, it's probably good for us to at least pump the brakes until we have experts that say that it's not a problem. But
Right.
yeah, you're right. At the end of the day, who actually takes care of that is the state.
But the bottom line is we have zero authority to say no to somebody that comes in with some type of will serve letter or water right. If they want to change that, they should change it at the state level.
Yep, unless they're asking for a rezone, then you got all the authority in the world.
Yeah.
I do think one thing to be just where we can collaborate a little bit on this, land use jurisdiction versus water right or water supplier deal is we put some standards together. We would love to coordinate with the county to make sure that your ordinances and standards
That's
that apply to this are they're working together, not against each other.
I like it.
They're cohesive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to send it over to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, can you get that to these guys?
Yep.
I should have.
I think that's where we're gonna get a lot of this synergy is if
Right.
we understand this is our responsibility, but we need your support as far as ordinances and things like that are concerned to make sure that we're supporting one another.
We've
Now-
got an online project review portal that sends out automatic notifications to different review agencies. And so we can add you guys on there and make sure we get, check that
Great.
box. If it comes to one of those one of those other water companies working with you guys, it probably won't go to you, it'll go to them. But wells and stuff like that, we definitely add you to that list with the help.
Will, do you guys audit the individual districts annually, or is that the state? That they have to send in reports of, we have X amount of connections.
State.
The yield.
State would do that.
Is it the state?
We
that
would be
audits
asking
them?
for your water meter reading
Mhm.
under your contracts, but that's about it.
So basically, you have no way of knowing if they've over allocated
Right.
their water at any point. A district, so. And unfortunately, so if we can't get any will serves from anybody in the Upper Valley, we will be creating our own district with hopefully the Osprey Ranch. Is what we're planning on joining.
But you have made application to the Wolf Creek Water and they just aren't responding to you?
Not yet. I've asked for an appointment with Miranda.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I
Which
sure hope
I'm
that
waiting for
happens
the
soon.
appointment, but I think she was on vacation or she was
Okay.
on a trip.
Holiday.
Holiday,
On
holiday,
On holiday.
on holiday, yeah.
He's here.
I see that.
She's
so-
in Ohio with
Yeah.
her family.
Miranda.
Hi, Miranda.
I
Yeah, there you go.
I could comment to that. I am not on holiday by any stretch of the imagination. My daughter has a 1-week-old baby. I am on night shift. If you think that that is a holiday, gentlemen, you have not lived.
That is great.
Wonderful.
So whenever you have a little bit of time, Miranda, I'd love to meet with you.
I did get your email, Laurent, and I have made the board aware of your interest in meeting, and we will do so in due course. But right now, we need to see what is going to be happening with our reuse project and with taking care of our moratorium. We currently have a complete moratorium, and that means we do not have the water to provide to Nordic.
Okay.
I think if we all work together and if you were otherwise going to drill a well or create a district or create a water company or whatever, finding a way to connect what water you're providing, bringing online to what they have available, it just sounds like you're just going to be boosting the entire system and everyone who's connected to it would be
Yeah.
ideal.
Yeah.
Sounds like it, yeah.
You know, and the community in the Nordic area is very actually excited about having a more functional district, sewer wise and water wise. And so it does bring a valued support there.
Yeah, some of those lots are old enough that those septic systems are ready to be replaced.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
and
You're right.
so,
And they know the percolation is not great.
Yes, they're all about cleaning up the soil there, so we haven't got pushback in that area at all. So.
Very good.
Thank
All right,
you.
everybody, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate you
All
coming
right.
in.
I like
Thank
your head.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
And
gentlemen.
Mr. Chair, I hear that our 1 o'clock.
It is, so we're right on schedule.
We're back on schedule.
See?
How about that?
Wow,
That's what we get for fast talkers.
Efficiencies.
you're living right.
Sorry, it was my prayer that you guys were behind because
Well,
I
we
was.
appreciate you bringing a little prayer to us.
Well, yeah, I was running late. this
Rhonda, you got a
morning.
fast car too. You got a car.
I did.
I think you need to go back to the Pinto.
Where do you want her to go back to?
A Pinto.
I want a bug. I want a VW bug. And like one of the buses that has the,
Oh,
that you can
yeah.
go vacationing in.
You want one of those new Volkswagen bugs,
Yeah,
those
yeah.
Volkswagen combis.
And you pop out the table and the bed and that. Wouldn't that be sweet?
No.
Rick. Don't know what happened there.
You want me to take this back to you?
Yeah, so we welcome you all back. For some reason, you got muted there for a second. Anyway, we're at our 1 o'clock people on the agenda have decided not to come in. They've, I don't know what happened there, but something did. But anyway, we're now at our 1:30 time. So we welcome the McKay Dee Hospital and their new administrator, Judy Williamson. And it's up to you folks.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, we're here to present our charitable contributions for 2021 as well, but wanted to give a minute for Judy to tell us about where you've been and.
Fabulous. Well, I'm excited to be here in my new capacity as the administrator at McKay Dee. I've been with Intermountain Healthcare for 25 years. Started my career as a young nurse at Primary Children's and have worked through the organization for that time frame. Most recently, I was the administrator that opened Davis Hospital. Oh my goodness. Layton Hospital in Davis County, little slip there. So I've been there for about 6 years in that capacity, and I'm really excited to learn more about Weber County and Davis. I keep saying Davis. Oh my goodness. Weber County McKay Dee Hospital. So thank you for having me today.
Good to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you.
One of the things that's been cool with our connection to that hospital, why it's been an easy transition for us for Judy, is that we share a board.
Yes.
So Layton, yeah, I mean, just like you partner as a county, like we partner as a county with our Davis County neighbors, we do that a lot as well. Our partnership with Weber State University serves that purpose quite a bit, as you know, with shared campuses in both counties. And it's been a good thing for us to make sure that we have the resources that we need to reinforce that quality of care. So anyway, I'm also pinch hitting a little bit today, you guys. Chris Dallin is usually here with you for this one, and I've taken on a different role at Intermountain, so I may not be able to hang out with you as much in the future. But it's good to be with you.
What's your new role?
I'm working on federal issues. Yeah, so I've gone from the local to the federal side, which just hopefully means at least a few sky miles out of the deal.
So you had announced a merge with another
SCL.
organization, and then I see that merge has kind of been put on hold, is it?
No, not at all.
It's still
No.
functioning and
Yep.
getting
yeah.
ready to take place?
That's done, actually.
Is
Yeah.
it? So what's
That
that?
was done.
Yeah, what's
It
that
is.
gonna, how's that gonna affect us at all?
So, well, yeah, we can all answer that question.
From probably all of our different perspectives, from a day-to-day operations, from a McKay Dee and a Weber County and Intermountain standpoint, no. It does give us a lot of benefits in the more national perspective of healthcare and our influence into other states. So from my perspective, it's really taking our expertise as Intermountain Healthcare and expanding it broader. There will be some things that we do learn from SCL Health as they come and partner with us. So it's a really powerful merger between the two and allow us to just get more efficient, more effective, and provide better healthcare to more people.
There's a couple of strategic advantages for us. SCL Health is a Catholic healthcare system. And has some legacy. As Intermountain, you may or may not know, is started originally by the LDS Church.
Yeah.
So we have a very similar legacy that way. They're also particularly good at rural healthcare. So hospitals in Montana, Colorado, with major clinic presence in Kansas, Wyoming as well. And so there's some things that we hope that we can learn from each other as we go through this, but that integration is ongoing and has actually gone very well, much smoother, frankly, than many of us expected. First having it closed just a short while ago, closed this spring. So anyway, we're excited about that. So that's a good question. There's the charity plan, and I believe that's on everyone's screens right now. And a report really is, this is last year's stuff, and then talking about what we're working on this year. The reporting, as you well know, always takes a little bit, lags a little bit behind. But we wanted to get ahead of that this year with you. The mission statement is the primary driver. So this is, anytime I'm asked the question by one of our local administrators or by someone at central office that's trying to plan something, the constant driver is back to this mission of, is this in line with our mission of helping people live the healthiest lives possible? That's down to the initiatives that we've run, in particular here in Weber County. Hopefully you've seen that. That's the end game for us with everything that we engage in. We had a big presence just a few days ago here with the Hope Walk in downtown Ogden, and all sorts of volunteers from our team that were here helping with that, and including reaching out and working with each of the high schools in our community to make sure that they're connected to the resources that they need for mental health.
Yes, I think we had 2,300 participants at the walk on Saturday, and many of them were high school students.
Good to know.
So there's the strategy piece, but then there's the personal piece for me. Both of my teenage daughters, without any conversation from me, were a part of volunteering for that. Right? I didn't tell them about it at all. It was just the, hey, Dad, we're going. Great, awesome. What do you need? Oh, we've got it put together. So it's really satisfying, right? It's really cool when they're organizing themselves because they understand that it's important, and particularly this is really the kids looking out for each other.
Yeah, but they see the actions of their parents and they're exceptional, so they're good.
Well, all right, I'll just move on.
Take the call.
Thank you, sir. The not-for-profit mission is particularly important to us in Intermountain Healthcare. We intentionally engage in this space on purpose so that we can have the ability to reinvest back into the communities that we serve. The mission statement here, we help meet the diverse healthcare needs of our communities by providing excellent care at the lowest appropriate cost, regardless of the patient's ability to pay. Hopefully you'll be able to. Driver. Oh, Zoom is.
So I have my microphone off. Is it me?
Oh, shit, the owl just,
Is it
the
our
eyes,
microphone?
Yeah.
Oh,
The
the
owl
eyes
just
just
turned off.
disappeared.
Yeah.
What happened, Barb? If something's happened with the power supply of the owl, probably, if it just turned off.
Yeah.
So is our sound
I don't
gone?
know. Go ahead. It looks good now.
Is it going now?
Yeah.
I think we're back in business, Harv.
Okay. All right. Maybe they probably don't need to see me anyway. Okay, here we go. So hospitals is community anchors. McKay Dee Hospital is our 2021 data. 2,700 caregivers here in Weber County, 321 inpatient beds, 53 medical specialties. That's a big deal. So when we're talking about, I just returned from Washington, D.C. last week, talking to our Idaho friends. And we're the primary referral center for a lot of those communities as well. We have the specialties that are needed to take care of a wide range. So you're talking western Wyoming, southeastern Idaho, including, of course, the communities in Utah that depend on the level of care that we can provide at McKay Dee. The nearest, closest level of care that can be received here in our system is in Murray, frankly, in Salt Lake. So we're an important referral center in addition to being able to take care of our own
Open in
community here.
1910, that would be the old D hospital, right?
yep.
It would be,
So
yeah,
3 locations. The
yeah,
original D, our current North Campus, and then where we are now.
yeah. And of course, you ripped down the one where I was born. I'm disappointed there's not a plaque of some kind. But there it is.
We're working
Well,
on
they
that,
ripped
yeah.
down the one that Jenkins and I were born too, long before they tore down that one.
At least there's a park in yours, right? We can play. 800 medical. I apologize. Chris would be much more professional at this point.
I wouldn't be too sure.
The 800 active medical providers is also a very big deal. That includes our contracted partners, all of those who are available to serve our community.
Sorry,
Yeah.
we have 800 active medical providers. There are 1,400 that are credentialed that can respond.
Oh, really? So it's even
And
larger
it's
than what I
larger, yeah.
understood.
1,400.
Mhm.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, that's why
Because
that's
there's
why
a
we bring Melissa.
Yeah, because there's a large group of physicians like family practice and more primary care that are credentialed in the hospital, but they don't ever come in and take care of patients in the hospital. They have that for their paneling with a lot of our select health products and other insurance companies require them to have credentials at a hospital. So that's that group that don't come in the hospital but are credentialed.
Yeah. Good.
Highlights in 2021, nearly 3,000 babies delivered, Weaver County, 10,000 surgeries, just picked up again, 53,000 emergency room visits. You can see one of those numbers dramatically outsized compared to the others.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about what those need to look like, and you're going to see some proposals from us on a system-wide basis to try to deal with that. A dramatic increase, in particular in mental health. Despite the investments that we've made. And you've seen from the legislature this year with the funding that we were able to secure for Weaver County with the Behavioral Health Center.
Weaver Human Services.
With Weaver Human Services as well, in partnership with them. But
So that's your receiving center.
Receiving center.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I got a big question to ask on that.
Yeah.
We'd like to know how you plan on connecting that center into the system. You know, that's a big deal as far as nonprofits and people who are going to be referring people up to there. And we've received nothing out of you. You just all of a sudden one day you get a allocation of funds out of the legislature, and that's the first we've heard of that. It's not like you've even done anything with the county. In fact, I understand you've talked to the sheriff a little, but you haven't talked to us, and we don't have a clue of what you're planning on doing with that. So we would like to schedule a meeting with you.
Sure.
To sit down and talk about that, because we think this is a pretty big deal. And we want to make sure that the system of healthcare, the health department and
Human services.
well, human services to an extent, and certainly the sheriff, because you're going to be getting people from him. We want to know how you're planning on being part of that system.
With Weaver Human Services.
Oh, we know that.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't even know whether to be happy or unhappy about that, because, well, it's something that they just kind of took on, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
what were you thinking? You know, the sheriff is trying to build a receiving center right now. And is this going to duplicate services? What are you planning on there? And we don't really know what you're planning. And I realize this didn't originate with you.
Sure.
But that's my whole point here. It's like, geez, Kevin, you got this thing started. What are you planning on doing with it?
I think it's very clearly, I mean, you never know like what communication is happening among other entities, but we should definitely have just everybody in this room probably to have that conversation in detail. And so that probably means Representative Gwynn, who carried the appropriation, Weaver Human Services, of course, and their team. And then we could, of course, be a part of that, and the sheriff. That's probably the best way to flesh out.
Well,
all
that
those
was our
answers.
plan, is to put something like that together. Is that okay with you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
In a couple weeks.
sure.
Yeah, we've been wanting to kind of get that pulled together at hospital level. We've started meeting with the police chiefs just to kind of strengthen our relationships there. We have really strong relationships with EMS. Now we're working on police. So that was kind of our next step, was pull a meeting like that together. But I think that'd be great to have.
Yeah, well, you know, the integration of the system, you know, I get a little frustrated over this whole thing.
Sure.
And it's not just this. This is just happens to be one more in a series of things. The system that works with people's, the indigent and the homeless and the folks that typically come into a receiving center. It's just a whole bunch of people doing their own thing here. There's no coordination at all, hardly. And when we try to coordinate things, I'm just amazed how this stuff just pops up out of nowhere. And the last place I felt like we had to start looking is at the sheriff's department, but here we are. And then out of nowhere comes the Weaver Human Services. Well, I do understand why they would be involved in this, but you'd think they'd say something about it. All three of us are on the board. And I was reminded here, I questioned these guys the other day about it, and I was reminded that it did come in front of our board at one time as a point of information. But that was about it.
It's not a lot.
Yeah, it's not like we even know what they're planning on doing with this.
Yeah.
And so
That's
Well, I
okay.
get very frustrated here because there's no coordination inside this system. And nobody wants to talk about coordinating.
Oh, no, we're very interested in the conversation. And some of what you're expressing right now with the lack of communication reflects some of ours. And frankly, we found out about it. We weren't approached before it was submitted. And yeah.
No, okay. You weren't even approached before it was submitted, huh?
No.
There was
So-
some different leads in the system that we weren't communicating well with each other. So that's, I can tell has spilled over here. And so
Oh, yeah.
I think there's still a lot of questions. I don't think that anything is finalized and filled. in
Yeah.
Well, I know
stone,
Chris
so-
Dallin knew about it because there was some conversations a long way back that he suggested that McKay Dee be a good site. And that, you know, again,
Yeah.
after that, I didn't talk too much.
Yeah.
One thing we might want to add to that, Mr. Chair, is we've had some discussions about our opioid settlement money.
Uh-huh.
And if we're gonna have that group with the sheriff and that group in the same room,
Maybe that's a good time.
it'd be a good point to see, because you hopefully would have some funds to direct that. We just want to make sure that with our Weber County opioid settlement funds, that we're not duplicating, and we want to make sure that they're going to the right spot. I would think McKay Dee would have a, good story to tell as far as where you think, you see those people from mental health, or they show up your emergency room.
Right.
Maybe you could, have an idea of, this is where we should target.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't have, there's not a lot of money, maybe $1 million a year, something like that. But if you guys, if we can come up with a community-wide program where you put some money in, we use some of our money, I think it's gonna benefit us all.
I think that's great too. Yeah.
Well, I've got her putting that together. I didn't have them on the list. I'll put them on. the
No, I think,
Okay.
well,
That's a good
Well,
idea.
thank you.
I'd like to have your input. I mean, you see those people in your emergency room.
Who should we invite?
So the opioid conversation.
Yeah,
So Weber Human Services have some of those communities that care, the CTC groups. I know they've done some messaging in the community. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't invite Weaver Human Services on purpose.
yeah, I don't disagree with that.
That's okay.
Well, Weber Human Services
But he was
kind of
from our
has their
side.
own agenda. I think we decided to
Yeah.
exclude Weber Human Services just so we got a different perspective.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that'd be smart.
And I
'cause-
don't,
Yeah, I think you're smart. They do have funds that's really spent very locally, and it's
Yeah.
determined by those committees.
right.
So the discussion we had, the three of us, is look, this is a once in a lifetime. We're gonna get $1 million a year
Right.
for 20 freaking years.
Yeah.
So if ever we were gonna start a program that had the chance of changing our community,
Yeah.
this would be the time.
Okay.
And so that's why,
I like that.
that's why we're looking at this a little different angle right now. We want to know, is there something we should be looking at? We started with just kind of thinking, well, let's just give this Weaver Human Services and let them manage it. And then they come in with a request to start talking about the things they were going to do. And it was like, this is the same old stuff, doing the same old thing in the same old way.
Mhm.
And that's why we started talking with each other about, hey, maybe we ought to talk about this,
Mhm.
at least before we pull the trigger.
I think you're headed in the right direction, having them in.
Do you think?
Sure.
They're not Johnny come lately?
Not
Yeah.
lately.
So
Yeah.
Same
Same
old, same old
Is that like Jennifer
institution
Leary,
doing the
or do
same
we have
old
somebody
stuff.
locally?
I wanted to put money into it.
So
That's why
I
I
think
wanted
we'd
to.
want to
yeah.
include.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Okay.
And I'm happy to jump in as well.
Okay.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And honestly, we've tried some different messaging and different campaigns over the years. So we've done for opioid awareness. Different messaging is key in this, right? So we actually had somebody that was driving by the hospital. We had some messaging up about how, you can become addicted within 7 days. And that encouraged him to kind of taper off of his medication, and he shared his story with us. So it is different messaging, it is different programming. You want to make sure it's being spent the right way. And I think you're being very thoughtful about that. Would be happy to help.
All right, I'll
Yeah.
put you on the list.
Yeah.
At least sit in the room, see if you got anything to add.
Yeah, I'd like to hear their perspective.
Well, when we approach our caregivers who deal with this, with those 53,000 visits,
Yeah,
right, they're gonna have some opinions on what's working and what's not.
Mhm.
And we appreciate those
Yeah.
opinions. That's exactly what we
Yeah.
want.
I want to hear from the
Yeah.
people, boots on the ground. Those guys that
Right.
show up at your emergency room, those providers, okay.
Yeah.
They're gonna have the stories to tell.
Right.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Good.
This frankly leads into the next part of the conversation with community-based priorities. So this conversation we've just had is emblematic of that. We hope to be able to partner with you on, we don't have obligations to shareholders. And so the primary question we ask is, what do our communities and patients need? Right.
Do you want to, just in the interest of time, do you want to skip ahead to our numbers? There we go.
Oh, back.
So this is a gift to the community for 2021 charity care cases, 16,354. This is not bad debt. This is active charity care. We still have people that don't pay their bills, and that is not included in this. So value adjusted charity care in Weber County alone, $17,613,724 for 2021. Community benefit, $173,451,383. Total gift is the combined total 191. Capital investments of 12 million. You probably heard about the new cancer center that we're actively building right now. In fact, they kicked me out of my old office, and Melissa, which is a good thing because we needed the space for the cancer center.
So we essentially took the whole first floor of the hospital, picked up all the pieces, shuffled them, and then put them back together. So it's made kind of a nicer registration and outpatient area where people can come for those services, and then it will be able to expand our cancer services as well. So the work is ongoing. It'll continue until 2023, and then we'll open.
We'll let you know when we're ready to do that and what it really means for cancer patients in Weber County, because that's the big. We've learned a lot, and it's almost unbelievable because I'm sure you all remember when this was a brand new hospital. Remember, seems like last week to me in a lot of ways, but it was over 20 years ago now. So we've learned a lot since then in how we treat cancer patients and how big of a difference it makes to be able to keep them closer to home. And so a lot of the changes that we'll make reflect that experience and that learning, and we'll be able to administer treatments and care that we haven't been able to in Ogden before. So we're excited about that. It's one of the things, frankly, we learned during COVID is that as much as we can keep patients close to home, the better off their outcomes will be. And so we're excited about that as it relates to our cancer patients as well. Capital improvements, you can see that right there. And then uncollected bad debt is reflected on the right. That's about $20 million last year.
They always tell us that, Harv, so that they can justify that tax status that the state gives them.
Yep.
Tax-free.
Well, frankly, it's part of the Supreme Court case. And so this is not a casual thing that we make sure we tell you. We want to make sure that we have reported to you to make sure we're in keeping with that requirement.
I just say that because as a legislator, we poked around that all.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yep.
And then just as a reminder, and again, I'm not as familiar with what is in Weber County, but there are components of Intermountain Healthcare that don't fall under that not-for-profit, that there are entities that we do pay taxes on.
Well, including at McKay Dee Hospital, right?
And
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
we do that.
Okay.
So every one of the clinics that lease from us, everything that's not directly related to charity care, taxes are paid in full on those. Additional gifts to the community, community service, education, clinics serving underserved populations. You probably are aware that we fund a lot of the work that happens at Midtown Clinic and several others here in Ogden. Health professional education, and then volunteer service.
And your next slide should have those agencies. Nope, we're gonna skip just right ahead.
It's several back. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah,
Oh, there we go.
I don't have to have them all memorized because she put them in here for me. Thank you. So obviously Midtown, the work at Lantern House, James Madison School, Wellness Clinic. Not significant, 63,000, almost 64,000 patient visits last year alone.
We appreciate your efforts there. Well, you know, that's a big deal to the community.
I know is these are some of those requirements that we talked about, but the specifics.
And you're just gonna stop.
Yeah.
There's the state requirements right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Community health needs assessment. That's something that just an incredible amount of hours go into every time we go through that for our community. But that's again to make sure that we're responding to the needs of the community. We always do reach out to commission, not just the health department, when we go through that process as well. to make sure that your priorities are reflected in the plan.
And then just go through each one.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions for us?
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't.
Good information.
We'll plan on getting you involved in this, so as we go.
Please do. We would always rather be in the conversation on the front end. So that's important to us. And I love that that's your focus. Yeah. Is there anything else that we can help you with today?
Not for me. Appreciate the
All
update.
right, we appreciate you coming in.
Great.
Well,
Very much.
before we
Thanks for
go,
coming. Sorry I'm a little late.
Commissioner, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
I know we've had that conversation before, but personally, but on behalf of the hospital Intermountain, genuinely
Thank you.
appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Especially how you've dug into the homeless issue and all of these issues over the past 4 years. So.
Good. Thanks, guys.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Happy
Nice
day.
meeting you. Good
Happy
seeing you
day.
again.
That's right. Good seeing you.
Happy day.
Thank
Nice to
you.
meet you.
Good luck
You as
to you
well.
up there at the hospital.
Woo,
We hope
Thank
you
you.
are very successful.
Thanks.
Ryan, Paul's good seeing you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
And remember, Judy's a golfer, so we'll try to get you
Oh,
guys on the
I
golf
think we
course
signed
together.
it.
We golfed together at the Golden West.
Oh, did you?
That's right. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
actually golfed with Judy. She
Yes.
golfed with my wife and me. And
There
He
you
helped
go.
me along. She improved my golf swing incredibly.
she?
Yeah.
Well,
she
you're a good
kept
little
giving me
golfer, so
tippers.
that's
Yes.
right.
It was perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
See
you.
ya.
Thanks. Forgot I golfed with her. I knew I'd never.
Come on.
Well, you know, you get to be my age, Harlan, and things don't stick like they used to.
That's right. It doesn't stick like it used to.
Look at Jenkins.
Ah. Have you tried those pumpkin things, Scott?
Oh, Judas, so they tried to make 2 of them. I gotta stay away from them. They're absolutely delicious.
They are good.
I'm gonna go get some water. I'm gonna go get some water.
Good for you.
Long time no see.
Yeah, did you blow your mind this morning?
Gentlemen, no,
Hey, guys.
back again.
We're back. Chad gets the air conditioning seat.
Yes, put him under that AC.
It gets crisp.
You cringe, I smile, I just like, yeah.
No, I think
that's the whole-
to separate those decisions was the right thing to do. But
Yeah.
from our point of view, that's hard to do because they all are so interrelated.
Well, but if we can get firm commitments on the one,
Yeah.
then I would feel much more comfortable moving on the second. Does that
I
make
agree with
sense? Because it's been 6 years and, oh, we were just waiting for you to tell us to go.
What's
Yeah.
that, 6 years?
That was kind of crap, wasn't it?
Yeah,
When Brandon said this morning, he says, we just been waiting for you to tell us. That's what he said, Gage.
No comment.
Yeah.
so I smiled too at that. One cringed, I smiled. I was like, yep, it's all us, just waiting on us to tell you to go.
All right, everybody. This is our 2 o'clock discussion on sewer fees. We welcome you all here today. And so Scott, we'll turn this over to you.
Do you mind if I borrow the mouse? I have a presentation. I'll show you.
Right there, bud. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Who are you?
So just so you know, I've got a 3:10 hard stop. I have to leave here 10 minutes after 3.
Okay.
Go get my eyes done.
Oh, you're.
I know, Gage, this is trip number 14.
Well, I'm gonna go
Yeah, I
a
was gonna
different
say, I thought
way.
you
You
did
taught me a
that
lesson. I'm not doing that.
And I'm not done yet. After this, there'll be one more. So
Really?
I think it'll end up with 15 trips to get these done.
Wow. Holy crap.
I know. I'm just telling you, I'm just so wore out over this.
You're convincing
You
me
finally
that's
get to a point where he says, so how's that? I said, it's good enough. I don't care. It's good enough.
not- No. Well, you probably sit around waiting to get in.
Oh, yeah.
For a half hour or so, or
Yeah, it's a hour and 45-minute trip every time you go.
is it? So
Good night.
I'm having mine done on October 2nd. Well, one of them.
Just corrective surgery?
Same thing.
LASIK.
Yeah. But I
Not
find-
LASIK,
no,
cataract.
cataract.
Oh.
I
Cataract.
said LASIK, I meant cataract.
That's scary stuff, though.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
here we
Here
go.
we go, sewer rates. So if you remember, commissioners, a while ago, we talked about sewer rates and said we wanted to look at them and potentially raise the rates that we're charging in our sewer areas. So we've got 4 areas right now. We've got Lower Valley, Upper Valley, Crimson Ridge, Radford Hills. 4 separate fees. So what we did is we went through and we just did this analysis on all of them. I've got all 4 of them. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but we've looked at their operating costs over the last 5 years. We looked at the cost that we need to replace the existing infrastructure with a 150-year life. So you can see here's our regular operating costs. It's not too bad. But then if you look at how much we need saving for repair and replacement, it's about another 31,000. So we add that all up. Turns out with a 10% over or indirect cost, we need about $44 a month per sewer system. Currently, we're charging $40. So we would propose an increase from $40 to $44, $47, or we'd round it to 45 or whatever we wanted to do.
That's per connection, I'm assuming.
Per connection per month.
Yeah, got it, okay.
Yeah, this is a monthly charge.
Yep, monthly
Yeah.
charge. So we did the same thing with Upper Valley. They're being charged 40. We think they should be charged $44.50. Those 2 were easy. They're the biggest ones and they were the easiest ones. The hard ones, so Crimson Ridge, they're currently paying 33. And based off of that same analysis, they should be paying 71. And then if you look at Radford Hills, they're paying 25 and they should be paying 36. So not that big of a difference. But the Crimson Ridge was the biggest one.
Yeah.
So we've talked about this. We have a couple of different options. So Lower Valley is fine. We would recommend leaving Lower Valley just as it is, other than we'll bump the rate up, to $44. The Upper Valley option, there's 3 different options. So we can leave all 3 rates for the Upper Valley separate. So Upper Valley, Crimson Ridge, Radford Hills is separate. Or we could leave Upper Valley as separate and combine Crimson Ridge and Radford Hills. Or we could combine all 3. So I want to show you what that looks like.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Doesn't that get away from your thought process of making sure that areas pay for themselves? I mean, just in theory. My
Yeah.
whole time here, you said, well, that area needs to pay. That's the reason why we have a municipal services fund.
I'm presenting options to you. I can give you a recommendation if you
fine.
like.
I'm quiet.
I'm not trying to make the decision for you.
Hold on.
Who's the messenger?
Okay, I'm sorry.
So I'm
All
I'm
right.
giving you options. So here's the summary. So if we keep all 4 separate, Lower Valley goes up by 11%, Upper Valley by 11%, Crimson Ridge goes up 107. These 2 right here are in a special service district called the Pineview West Special Service District. It's an actual separate legal entity that the county runs. So if commissioners wanted, we could easily combine those 2 rates and say, look, if we have extra money in Crimson Ridge, it can help Radford Hills. If we have extra money in Radford Hills, it can help Crimson Ridge. We're diversifying or spreading out the risk that one of these sewer systems fails over a bigger
Aren't those 2 right
population.
next to each other?
They're right next to each other,
They're
although
not physically connected.
No,
no, they're not.
but they're part of the same sewer. district.
They're the same sewer district.
Yeah, to me, that makes sense.
So if we were to do that, then instead of doing like $70,
Yeah.
we would be 50 and 50. So instead of being 71 and 36, you'd be at 50 and 50. So it's, one's paying a little bit more than they would, one's paying a lot less than they would.
71 and 36, 107, and 50 and 50 is 100.
There's not the same number of units in each.
No, different number of
There's a
units.
different number of units, so that's why it's weighted a little bit different.
Right.
The third option, and this will go back to Commissioner Harvey, that would be to put all of the Upper Valley, Crimson Ridge, and Radford Hills into one sewer service district. And if we were to do that, this is what their costs would be. So instead of $44 for Upper Valley, it would be 46, Crimson Ridge and Radford Hills. So I summarized them all on this slide right here. So currently is the first column, option 1, option 2, option 3. So you can see the big swing is not Upper or Lower Valley, it's Crimson Ridge and Radford Hills, with Crimson Ridge being the biggest swing. So now, Chad, I guess your argument would be, and this goes back to you, Commissioner Harvey, that keeping the systems separate means that Crimson Ridge pays for Crimson Ridge and Radford Hills pays for Radford Hills, and we don't cross subsidize those. So what that does mean, though, is that Crimson Ridge needs to pay a lot more.
Yeah.
If you want to combine them into one, because it is currently one special service district, we could do that. They're right next to each other. I don't know if we ever imagine those systems being connected or not, but basically it's like insurance. You're diversifying the risk. You're spreading it across more users, but then you're going to have somebody say, hey, I'm in Radford Hills. Why? Same argument plus if you did the Upper Valley and Crimson Ridge and Radford Hills together.
But they may not be as negative if all of a sudden you have a major issue up there to repair.
Sure.
That falls on Radford Hills now that they have the ability to take the residents out of Crimson to help pay for them. So it all depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, and that's why I'm giving you the options. I'm not telling you what you guys should do. So if you want to pool the risk like an insurance company, then we do option 1 or option 2 or option 3. If you want to keep everybody separate and have everybody pay for their own costs, that's option 1. But what we need to do is we need to make some adjustments to the costs. So I think that's really kind of what you feel is the most appropriate thing, commissioners, but we do need to raise those rates a little bit to keep up with inflation, keep up with these rising costs.
So Chad, you got an opinion here?
So and I agree with Scott. I mean, the only thing that I would suggest is that like with Crimson Ridge, it is a little bit of a mechanical system, does a level of treatment and a higher level of treatment. However, going back to that same theory of what Scott's mentioned, in our Upper Valley, we have Traverse Crossing, which is the same exact system. And you used to have more individuals you can pool to kind of help to your aspect, Commissioner Frower, on, helping with those costs. So I'm really good either way, to be honest with you.
I mean, Upper Valley right now is one rate, lots of different systems.
So who's in Upper Valley?
Chad can tell you.
So the Upper Valley consists of, we got Emerson Hills, Bailey Acres.
Okay.
Trappers Crossing.
Trappers Crossing, and then Basin View up at the very top.
Got it.
And they all share one rate, even though they're not all connected.
Yeah.
So
You gotta combine them even though they're not next door to each other.
Mhm.
Correct.
when you start talking about the use in this Upper Valley, you had another one was on the same type of system. Why weren't they recommended at this? Is it because of the diversification of all of them?
We went through and did, we pulled all them together. So if we just took Trappers Crossing out separately.
Right.
It would have been, probably even a little bit higher, because they're only, I think, 30 units in there versus the 40.
Yeah, see, that's not fair. We're not one system. We're separate systems, and it's not fair for everybody to share in that. This is the way I look at it. Now I'm going to give you my opinion. I don't have a problem with these rates because the operating expense is pretty close. So for us to come in here and say, look, let's make these 45, boom, 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 and share it, I'm okay with that because we're all close enough. It's almost de minimis. But this one and Trappers Crossing, they're more, and they should not be subsidized. That's not fair. I mean, like I say, it'd be different here. There's only $8 between them, and I don't think that's too big of a deal, but here it's more than double. And that's just not right. So these guys ought to be paying $72, those two systems.
Well, if we want to do that, then we would need to go to Upper Valley and break those down because right now Upper Valley, as it always has been, is a combination of those 4 systems. So if we want to do a rate per system, we could do that as well.
So why is that fair to allow Trappers Crossing to be subsidized by the other 3? They put their system in, that's the expense of operating and replacing it. Why shouldn't they pay the higher figure?
I don't have a good answer for you on that. It just depends on pooling of the risk. So previously the decision was made with the Upper Valley to pool the risk. Now, is that fair? I don't know that it's fair. I don't know that it's not fair. It's just a decision that was made. So we can split it out easily.
Yeah, well, that's kind of my opinion, Gage. I don't mind.
So you want to see all
Barely.
7, 8 districts?
Yeah, okay.
separate?
No,
It
I'm
wasn't
okay
until the
with
last 2 years.
combining 6 of the 8 because they're close enough here. You can say, okay, we're gonna make them all $45 and that would be okay. But those 2 that are substantially higher, that are in the $70 and $80 range, they shouldn't be allowed to be leveraged down because it doesn't. Okay, I can use that word. It doesn't fairly spread their risk, their responsibility. It allows others It subsidizes them. That's what it does.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's fair, you know, for them to be subsidized by the other 6.
Chad, maybe you could explain to Commissioner Jenkins about how recently trappers have really even come online.
So Trappers Crossing was installed in like 2006, 2007, but due to some lawsuits and stuff like that, it prolonged it. But we just really had the first home really connected as we moved in within the last year. So that's why it's really kind of a new decision, really.
It
not
wasn't a
something-
factor
yeah.
before.
Right. Okay, that's even better yet. If
Yeah.
ever we were gonna do this, now's the perfect time because they're just coming on.
Yeah.
We can go point to this and say, look, this is your
Correct.
operation, cost of operations.
Mhm.
So this is
So
what you're gonna
what,
have
so
to
what's
pay.
Trapper Ridge now?
So Trappers Ridge, I think right now they're just paying the $40 a month.
No,
which is-
Trapper Crossing.
Trappers Crossing.
Yeah, so $40 a month individual units, so.
But if you, what's our actual cost?
I didn't bring it on my
Apologize, I didn't
spreadsheet,
bring
but we
that
had
up
it.
either.
But based on the way they figure it out, it's close to $71. Just
Pretty
like
close
that
to
one.
that same amount.
So you think at Trappers Crossing is close to the $70?
I
It's
guess it
almost
all
identical system to.
goes to even a factor too. I mean, I hate to get too nitpicky into it, but I mean, you could have individuals as they have in the past coming in and saying, hey, I'm right here at the closest system to Central Weaver. Why am I paying for the rest of this collection line out here? And so we've tried to make it, hey, let's just uniformly spread this cost over everybody. And that's kind of the aspect of what we were looking at here. A little bit different than the Pineview West because there's only 2 systems, but.
Yeah.
Different types of systems.
Totally
Different
different
type.
filtration
Yeah.
system. I got a question for you. Why can't you take Crimson Ridge down over and put it into the Osprey, the new lift station?
We hope that happens. That's part of that phase 2.
You'd have to go through Scan's property.
Maybe.
Well, yeah,
It'll be on the other side of Stan.
Say that again.
Maybe.
Osprey's
What?
already gonna kind of run through that.
I said Crimson Ridge, why don't you take Crimson Ridge and take it over to the Osprey lift station?
Right.
And then then
Discuss
it's all
that
gone
also.
away.
Yeah,
It's a possibility.
that is part
We
of
can
the
discuss
phase
that.
2 that they showed.
Yeah.
In their plan, so.
Yeah.
that Wolf Creek Water and Sewer did.
Does that,
It's amazing.
do you have a
how it
lift
shows that in
station that
Mount
you
Powder
pump out of that system into a drain field?
Right now we do have the drip field where it could go that route.
No, I didn't want to ask you. Do you pump into that? Is it pressurized?
Because the district's already.
So that's what I'm saying. So we have one that's a community, the drain field portion of it and the drip field. The drip field's pressurized and pumped into and the drain field's gravity
All in one system?
in one system. But it's operated with pumps within it that recirculate the wastewater as part of the
Right.
treatment process. So it could be easily modified.
So it could be easily modified, put a little higher head pump, turn it and head it over to the other.
The only difference is those pumps are set for just the effluent. That doesn't take into account any of the solids. Each of the homes have their own septic tank that take the solids. So if
Or
you're-
do they?
Yeah, so if you're to get rid of those, which would probably be the best scenario, then you would be changing a different pump.
Yeah, but we wouldn't have to get rid of those. Those are individual systems on every home. That's their
And they would
responsibility.
have to pump
I'd hesitate messing with that. But once it comes down to a collection point, you could turn that, go to that other easy.
Yep.
Yeah,
And the pumps
I'd
are set
agree
up
with that.
just putting more things on the pump to the higher head you're pressurizing. So
this is my feeling. It's all equity, it's fair. And that's how I feel it ought to be done.
So you want an option 1?
With a small modification, I'd want to put the crossing, Trapper Crossing, in the same one that Crimson Ridge is in. And then I'd want to take Lower Valley, Upper Valley, and Radford Hill and make those all the same at $45, say.
$45?
Yeah. 44.
So
45.
basically you'd have Crimson and Trappers Crossing the same rate and everybody else would be the same.
Exactly,
Is that what you're saying?
exactly.
So if we were going to do that, Commissioner, I would like permission to look at all of those 4 systems separately to make sure that they all have about the same cost, so we don't run into the same question with
Right.
another one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'd like to look at that just to
As long as you
verify.
verified the cost, I'm okay with it.
Yeah,
you'd probably end up reducing the amount in the upper valley. It would probably go down a little bit.
So,
Yeah, it would probably go down because you'd pull out the higher,
The high cost.
high cost. So it maybe it would fall down to 40. Maybe we would be collecting 40 and that's the right amount.
okay, I'm okay with that.
Don't you want to put a little extra in there just for a rainy day to have enough in the fund?
So we are building fund balance and we did include
Yeah, what's your-
an increase
what's your-
of, what was it? I think
CPI.
15%. So right here, sorry if I can get the mouse to work, we're increasing the average by 115% here
Okay.
for operations and maintenance and 5% for repair and replacement. So we do have
A little in
a
there.
little built in there. And I think we need to review this every year, every other year. So just to make sure we're still making minor
Yeah,
adjustments.
we
to
have
keep-
to have enough for, an impact.
Yeah.
It doesn't negative in, if it hit the budget.
Well, in long term, this is also replacement.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is
so,
a
you know.
big portion of this, like double
There you
the,
go.
the operating
That's
costs
right.
on here are 3,000 and the replacement 6,000.
I'd be for making that, you're exactly right about replacing, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Have those funds, and that's exactly right.
All right,
So if I understand correctly, we're gonna go back and look at those other rates in the Upper Valley and then just come back with, the concept is option one is what we like. Let's just recalculate the numbers. Separating Bailey Acres or Trappers Crossing and I forget the other name.
okay, so Upper and Lower Valley and Radford Hills are all gonna be, try to average the same, so it's one fee.
Mhm.
And then Crimson Ridge and Trappers Crossing, did I say that right? Will be another fee.
Okay.
So that's simple, 2 fees.
Okay, I'll bring it back to you once we have that calculation and we may make some proposal tweaks based off of the numbers we
Look
pull
at
out
those.
for Upper Valley.
I just soon do round numbers though. I mean, 45 is 45 and rather than 46.93. I mean, maybe he's gonna be.
Sure.
I agree.
Sure, definitely. There was another component to this and it was standby fees. So we talked to Zions Bank. We were going to contract with Zions Bank to help us calculate the standby fees. Then as we talked to Zions Bank and their area of expertise on this, so there's two things. One, standby fees are legal. And they fit for this purpose. I started to copy some different things from these different court cases we've
What's
looked
a
at.
standby fee?
So if I own a lot that I'm going to build my house on and it's not hooked to the sewer system, is there a benefit to that vacant lot for having the sewer system run through it?
Absolutely.
Sure.
And so the courts have found that yes, there is a benefit to a vacant lot to have that. And therefore you can charge the vacant lot a fee. So they say that, so they say basically, since there's a benefit provided, it's proper to charge a reasonable fee. And then they throw a wrench in the thing and say, but you have to base it off of actual costs. And so when we looked at the actual costs, and we talked to Zions Bank and said, how do those who actually have standby fees come up with their actual costs? And the answer is they pull a number out of the air.
Yeah.
They don't have any way. And so
No.
Garden City was sued on this and they lost. And I went through with Zions Bank.
Garden City did?
Garden City, yeah.
Oh, what were they charging? You remember?
They were charging $10 a month.
Really? I thought that was too much.
So here is the paragraph that this last bullet point, the city this is quoting their opinion. The city consulted a litany of experts in effort to ensure the fee was justified. Nothing in the record, however, reflects that the fee was set to reflect the cost of providing any service. And the reason is because you can't calculate the cost of providing a service to a home that isn't there. Without such support, acceptable amount of standby fee cannot be determined. So basically they just said, well, in theory, it is reasonable unless you can actually calculate the cost, you can't charge it. And so it's our opinion or my opinion, I think we share that any standby fee that we charge will not survive a legal challenge. And so I would argue that it's just not worth the time and effort to try to do it.
Powder Mountain does. Water and sewer. Yeah.
Is
it Wolf Creek or is it Powder Mountain?
I think Wolf Creek has one as well.
Yeah, Wolf Creek has one. There's several that have one, but there's no, so that's why we could put one on there. I just don't think it would survive a
But it
legal
hasn't,
challenge.
but they haven't been challenged in court.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying.
When Plain City did this, we charged the monthly fee, but not the connection fee, if they had not connected. We said, look, we ran it and we won't charge you the connection fee because you haven't connected, but you've got to pay the same monthly fee because we went to the effort of providing the sewer for you, and it's there in the road, all you gotta do is connect. Now, I've seen others that charge half fee, 50%, saying, look, since you're not on, we're not physically providing it, so all you're paying for is maybe the pipe in the ground and the fact that it's available to you. So we charged half fee. I've seen half fees.
Mhm.
But I doubt that any of them were litigated.
Well, I don't know. And we went and I talked to Susie Becker at Zions Bank. We were just trying to come up with some reasonable basis to calculate
Right.
these fees. And really it's, well, maybe they get half the benefit, or maybe it's $10, or maybe it's, we don't charge the connection fee. There was no reasonable cost that we could point at and say, here's the cost of having this vacant lot, having the ability to connect to our sewer system.
Well, I'm of the opinion, the only benefit you could show there, and this is your expertise, would be the value of the lot.
Yeah, and there would obviously be, probably in some cases, a great deal of value added.
Yeah.
But the value, there is no cost to us to having a higher value lot.
Look,
Yeah.
I got a statement here. You know, I just got back from the water school. And in southern Utah and in Nevada down there, if you've got, the value's not the lot, it's not the lot. Has nothing to do with the lot. Has to do with having the water. Because you can go anywhere down there, and if you've got 100 acres and there's no water, it's not worth 200, 300 bucks an acre. That's not what, but if you got water, that jumps up to a lot of money per acre.
Yeah.
All if you have water. So I'd argue all day long that I think standby fees are the opportunity to have water there. That's all there is to it.
Well, same thing with sewage.
And you don't, and you pay for the delivery system.
Yeah.
You don't pay for the water, you pay for the delivery system. And the standby fee is part of the delivery system. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I agree. What Scott's saying is you have to have the cost related to the infrastructure itself.
So I'm saying it's a reasonable, I mean, it's
For the
reasonable to have
monthly
that
use
type
of
of
it.
fee.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
I don't know how to calculate it, and neither did Zions Bank.
Yeah.
And so without being able to come up with
No,
a
I agree with
calculation, I
100%.
don't know
How you
how we
calculate.
survive a legal challenge.
You know, Harv, we're seeing that in our own area right now. And you say, well, where's that? Well, the amount of people who are developing on the west side out here.
Yeah.
They try to give property to the Parks District for parks. And they won't take it because they can't afford to buy the water to make the park green. So it's like, look, unless you've got the shares of water with the property, they won't take it.
as far as right, it's not worth anything.
Yeah.
That's what, I just want to learn in water school. I was paying attention.
No,
We can put a standby fee on there if you want. I don't have a reasonable way of calculating it, so we'll have to, I mean, we could consult a litany of experts like Garden City did, and we can come up with a fee to charge and see if we get challenged. We can do that if you'd like. There is a cost on our part of finding all the residents that own the lots and then actually collecting from them on a monthly basis. So there will be some administrative costs associated with trying to do that.
And if they don't pay, then following up to decide, are we going to go after them or?
yeah, is that something that from a management standpoint starts costing more than we collect?
It might, depending on what we
I mean,
decide to do.
I mean, if it's a $10 a month standby fee, the cost of collecting that could be $4 or $5 a month, depending if they're not willing to pay.
Goes on their title, goes on the title, and then when they go to build their lot, you get it collected.
Or
we could
go to their tax notice and collect it. But once again, we've done some of that right now. And the time and effort it takes to put it on their tax notice to collect is almost prohibitive.
Listen,
We're doing that with garbage.
We are.
We are.
water and sewer is expensive. You live up in that valley, it's
How
prime.
much this year did we put on there
Oh, I don't remember the delinquents. It was several thousand.
combined?
No.
16,000, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I think maybe a little bit more than that, 20,000, between
20,000.
16 and 20,000, but we added to the tax notices this year, 2020. So it'll show up in the 2022 bill in a month or so for delinquent garbage accounts.
Oh, so they haven't seen that yet?
Well, they saw their last year's.
Yeah, last year they saw.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but this year they haven't seen the new one yet.
haven't seen it.
'Cause we only had it
Went
once
up
a year.
little bit.
Yeah, we added that
And do they
$10.
pay it?
Yeah, it all got paid off last year.
So these guys just assume do it once a year. They're making us do this to get it.
I guess.
Well,
There are probably some that aren't actually using the service, but.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's the
There are
people
some.
that sell the house mid-year.
Right.
So they don't pay it, and then they sell the house in July, and then they've got,
Yeah.
9 or 12 months worth of back taxes. We've just been writing those off if the owners changed. We're not adding it to the new owner's parcel because it wasn't their debt. So we do actually end up eating a little bit of that, but that's okay because the admin fee covers that.
All right, well, I don't know what to do
I'm
here.
for the standby fee and not, if you're gonna swag it, I'd say $15.
Oh, man, $15 is a lot.
Not for up there.
Well, good point, but this is standby on the whole system, not just up there.
Well, so we're saying $15 on a $40 charge or $45 charge. So,
No, that's the standby.
well, that's what I'm
You
saying.
don't pay this if you're paying the standby.
I know, but I'm saying, do you think the standby fee is a third of the cost of
But
operating?
in
the system?
relationship to the 40,
That's where you get. the
15 is a little
You
high.
know, you're right about that.
But then, if you
Listen.
look proportionate, it's $5, then it goes back to my point, to collect
Is it
five,
worth it?
then is
It's
it really
not worth
worth doing it?
Listen, I just threw a starting
No.
point out there.
No, I like where you're headed with it, just a matter.
Well, if you had to justify this in court, you only drive in front of their home in their vacant lot. It's got pipe and it's connected to a collection system. And it's got pumps in it, and you you would have to go to that yearly maintenance fee that you had on there,
Mhm.
and you'd have to divide that by the number of lots and say, okay, all they're doing is paying the maintenance fee to make sure that when they build, there's a system to kind of connect to.
Well, and there's some theoretical questions on that. So if the developer puts in the system, now I'm having a vacant lot pay for the system that the developer put in, even though they don't have any, they're not using it. And then in 40 years or 50 years or 80 years, when we replace the system, do we make them pay for it again if they don't have, if they still haven't built? So, I mean, there's some questions and we can do that. I came up with more questions than I did answers. And so depending on the price of the fee, the conclusion I came to was if it's $5, it's just not worth the headache. and
That's
hassle
what,
for $5.
I think you gotta be $10 or it's not worth it.
Well, and I don't know where the threshold is,
Where-
but, but if we can't make it, if no matter what it is, it's a swag. And if we don't feel that it would survive a legal challenge, we're just gonna hope that nobody challenges us, then why are we even doing it?
Yeah.
If we don't feel it'll survive a legal challenge,
Good point.
why do we?
Well, I'm of the opinion it shouldn't be more than $10. Because you just are trying to protect that person's right to connect and their ability to have a solid system in there the day they want to connect. That's what you're trying to protect, right
And you
there.
got it, yeah, and you're gonna have to replace it all one day. I mean, this all goes to delivery.
You're right.
Well, the HOAs charge it. I guarantee you those vacant lots up at Crimson are paying their full HOA fees. The HOA fees in portion go to what? Water and sewer. So the HOA is collecting those fees, but you're saying the county, because of municipality?
In this
Can't?
case, where we're the body politic on it, we've been collecting those other than Hopkins Creek, because in their agreement that we made with them, they stated they would be responsible for it.
So
Yeah,
is
no, what I'm
there,
saying is the HOA, when you have a vacant lot at Crimson, you pay the
They're still
full.
paying their HOA fees more than likely.
Yeah, they are.
But they're not paying sewer and
Well,
water.
they're not paying sewer, but water, because they have their water system up. there.
Okay, maybe, so they don't pay sewer, they pay water. Okay.
yeah, but your point still won't take it. They're paying their
Yeah.
water even though it's a vacant lot.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
It's in their HOA fee.
I mean, I can go back and I can do my best effort to calculate something that seems to be reasonable based off of these costs. And if we do that, we can start charging the vacant lots. And then that will lower the amount that we're gonna collect on the regular monthly premiums because now that cost is being spread over more. So
Yeah.
maybe we won't even need to raise the
Well, if it's
fees.
there ready to go in the front yard, they could connect to it. There should be a fee established.
Yeah,
Because as Commissioner Harvey said, value goes up.
I don't disagree at
No
all. I
question
just don't know
about
how to
that.
calculate.
Sophisticated, wild.
Yes.
And great, sophisticated, wild and great, right? I mean, if we do this, then what I would do, so we contracted with Zions Bank to help us calculate this, but after they told me they really couldn't. We
Well,
didn't pay them
somebody knows
anything.
how to calculate it, because they come up with a pretty scientific way up there. If you call up Roy Watts there, they'll tell you how they come calculate it.
Well,
They
Zions
get
Bank is
those-
the one who does the study for them.
Maybe.
So let me tell you. I learned years ago by my auditor in the legislature, you don't try to hide this stuff. You just come forward with it and say, this is why we did it,
Mhm.
so they understand. So I think we need to say, if we're gonna do this, this is the amount and this is why we did it. I'm
Sure.
just that simple.
I'll do a reasonable basis and I'll come up with my best costs. I mean, we're not gonna just make up a number. I do
Yeah.
think we need to have something that's supported by a calculation because we need to be able to show that calculation.
I agree.
Um,
Come up with a number.
Yeah, but that's if you guys want to do it. So that was my first question before we go through all that effort and time. Given the probability of,
Do you have any idea how many lots are there vacant? Are we talking about 20 or 30 lots or 100 lots?
Right now, I'd say we probably have close to 100 between the upper valley and lower valley.
Okay, well, 100 lots.
That could be,
That'd be
Or Crimson Ridge.
$12,000 a year.
$1,000 a month.
Crimson Ridge is
No.
probably 40 of those and they just
12,000
barely
a
got
year.
Yeah,
platted. so-
12,000 a year.
yeah, I don't think I have the number of actual lots. I just have the number of connections. But you send me the number of lots.
that's not a huge amount, but
Yeah. So, I mean, we can, if that's the direction you'd like us to go, I can go back and I'll come up with a calculation for those standby fees and we'll see what the time and effort we think it will be to collect on it. I'll talk to John Bond and see. if
And
we
I'm
can-
not sure. I don't know what to do here. Gage, Harv,
I don't know. That's-
Okay, well,
maybe I'll just let it go.
I just give you my starting point.
What was that?
15. He said.
15, huh? Oh,
Ah,
Gage,
You're a tough Eddie.
now what do you want to do?
Well, one side of me said, I think we're, stepping over dollars to pick up dimes here in some sense.
That's what I worry about.
So, I don't know, how much time is it gonna take you to put together? I mean, if you do your study and it comes back $5, I'm gonna say, no, it's not worth it.
Yeah, and I think, we're right now about $2 sewer invoice that has to be mailed out by the time you print the envelope, mail the
Yeah.
postage, and then you get it back in time and record the paper check.
I'm-
It's like
I'm
it's
thinking
two and a half bucks a check, or $2.50 an invoice.
And we do get an income off the lot because they pay a little bit of property tax. Now, it's not a lot, but they pay a little.
Yeah, I don't know if it's enough money to worry about.
That's
So
what I
let me
feel.
ask you a question. All of a sudden, we gotta replace the pipe going down the road. And you got your home there and you're I'm gonna let that pipe go right in front of my driveway.
New
Or no,
pipe.
new pipe, right in front of my lot. I'm not gonna pay squat.
So the argument I'd make is I didn't put anything into the old pipes that went out. You had to replace. I didn't put a drop in there.
He wasn't using that, he was using his
Yeah.
Had a
backyard.
connection.
Well, I
after a certain
had a
amount of time.
house that didn't exist. Yeah. So,
Well, I thought you had an outhouse in your
Okay.
backyard.
All right.
I don't know. I understand. I can argue both sides of this really easily.
So do you charge the people that are further away more money because the pipe costs more?
Sometimes they do, actually. On a water system, you ought to know this, you just went to water school.
No, they didn't cover this part.
Well, they have a connection fee or an impact fee,
Yeah.
and based on your distance, yeah, you pay more on that.
No, I'm talking about the first of the subdivision or the end of the subdivision. I mean, we're
Yeah.
splitting hairs here, but
Well, typically when you do a subdivision, you do it in phases. So each phase has its own expense associated with it.
what if those phases are long and skinny?
Same. All right, I'm a no vote.
Okay,
You're no on
I
what?
talked you
I
right
don't
into
want
the
to charge anything.
Yeah,
So no
You talked me right out of it.
All right. I knew I could.
So no standbys.
Yeah.
So I needed to be able to say, I got 2-1 today and I'm.
You just did.
You just did.
So,
All right.
so if you're okay with the commissioners, we'll just calculate the fees based off of breaking out those others, and then we'll just put it on the commission agenda so you can see it, or do you want to see it
Yeah.
in a work session before that?
I don't need another work session.
No standby fees.
No standby fees, and we'll just adjust the
That's
fees
right.
based off of the, okay, so you and I will need to talk in just a minute. Ted.
Great. Thanks,
Be
Scott.
decisive.
Appreciate you.
Be decisive.
All right.
And keep them a round number, would you?
Yeah, I'll smooth it.
Bill Ross, so we're waiting for Scott Mendoza. Is he
He's
sitting out
actually
there?
out there. This will be a closed
Do
session.
you need,
All right.
Motion to go to closed session.
part of this one?
Is that a motion?
What's on my
Motion.
calendar? Which one is it for?
All right, we have a motion, and a second to close this for the, go to a closed session regarding purchasing, exchange, or lease of real property. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're now in a.
Buddy on?
Yeah,
All right, well, welcome right back to the Board of Commissioners work session. We're now on agenda item 10, 3 p.m. I apologize, we're running about 21 minutes late, but we're here to meet with our Weber County Sheriff, Mr. Ryan Arbon. I'm going to turn the time over to Sheriff Arbon.
Thank you, and I'd like to welcome everybody as well.
Yeah. We have a lot of people.
Commissioners. Just a quick report. First of all, I apologize for my attire. I was at a
Heard your golf today.
golf with Timmy.
How'd you do?
Did pretty good, 8 under.
Oh, that's
at
good.
the Ogden Country Club.
I saw Timmy this morning. He said he was golfing with you.
Yeah, it's nice. It was the, what's it called? National Heroes Project or something like that. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
Randy Watts deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's good. Just to a couple of quick items. Laura Andelin, as you know, she's our awesome, she does the reentry facility and works at Kiesel for a lot of the inmates. As you remember, back when we did Bridge the Gap, we had just all kinds of groups and counselors and individual entities that wanted to come in the sheriff's and just whatever inmate, whatever program they wanted. So we channeled everything through her, and it's not, she was not necessarily a stopgap. She was just kind of a turnstile, right? Let's get the right person, the right program. She's doing good. She's continued to do great. Recently, she's doing really good to reach out to the community and becoming partners with them. I think they're going to request another position for her this year budget season to help with the work that they're doing down there at Kiesel, the reentry facility.
So is this Kiesel?
Yeah, Kiesel's. You guys know Kiesel's reopened to a certain level. Just on a personnel level, Chief Neely Adams declared his retirement around January or February. Yeah, so if you
hard to replace.
If you would like to talk about that further, we could go into closed session at the end.
Okay.
Okay.
We want to talk about it further? Is that something we should
You
know?
probably want to know what's
Okay.
going on,
All right, got it.
but it's good.
Okay.
It's good. You're going to see an MOU come across with the Utah Internet Crimes Against Children, or ICAC. It's about $12,000. It's basically reimbursement. So any training they offer, any type of activities they do, our office goes with them. That's what it's for. So Chief Perry said to make sure you knew about that. And the Access Center is open. We'll talk a little more about that later. Remember, that's the
What's
one
the
we work.
access center?
So remember, I wanted to get some sort of a center where instead of, you have someone that's either intoxicated, high, and they really didn't commit a crime, but the family won't accept them, or the crime's very minor,
yeah.
and jail's not the place.
Got it.
So it's that partnership that Kevin Eastman's got with IHC.
We were talking about that earlier today.
Yep, and so that's good, and we're getting ready to roll it out for law enforcement. So we should start to see, probably by the end of the year, a decline in people coming to our jail. Should.
Hopefully.
I think actually
Prayerfully,
we
yes.
set up with IHC here this morning, this afternoon, whatever it was. We requested a meeting, an update on that. And you're
Yes.
invited, you should be invited to that.
Yeah, I'd like to be, Kevin's been working out, the funding's there, everything's there. The next phase, if you will, is law enforcement. Also, I requested that they start with Ogden City first, to start taking their customers there first, work out the kinks, and then Weber and Roy will come on, and then the rest of the county will come on. That should be about a 3 to 6 month window, should be, okay? And then finally, let you know that one of our the sheriff's conference is this week. That's why I'm dressed like this. I'm driving down right now.
Oh, yeah, you're going right now? You're going to,
I'm leaving today because we have a golf tournament tomorrow
how long's the drive down there?
to St. George.
Oh, you guys are in St. George.
They're in
We're
St.
not-
George.
We are.
Okay.
We're in Bryce.
Okay, just before us.
So I think it's still about 5 hours, or 4.5 hours.
Really?
Yeah.
So one of our deputies will be getting Deputy of the Year.
Oh, really?
For sure, we know that.
Cool.
So last year, like Jail Commander and my award, we didn't know about it until we got down there. So, but
Okay,
yeah, so
be safe.
will be great. And we'll make sure to post it. This is
I'd like to see
awesome.
this.
Yeah, I believe it's Sean Ensley. He's an awesome rock star.
That's great. Good
Yeah.
to know. What else?
That's it.
Motion to move to closed session. to
Second,
discuss
all those in favor?
personnel. Second.
All those in favor? All right, we're in closed session.
Okay, they gotta, there you go.
Let's mute that.